is everybody today? How we all doing? Hopefully good. Pumped today. I want to rumble. I want a good old-fashioned fucking rumble, man. A good brawl. Let's get some good music. Let's get pumped for a brawl. Let's do that. All right, all right. Back to your fucking elevator music. I was vibing to that. You want that banger? I'll link the banger after the show for people who liked it. Some days you're just in the mood for a brawl. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm just in the mood for a good brawl. Just waiting on a link back here. What's this guy's view? It's, well, it's degeneracy. Mixed with a little bit of degeneracy. Those are his views. With a dash of also degeneracy. It's like in here listening to heavy metal while drinking out of my daughter's Mario cup. A little weird. A little weird. It's like after you have relatives over and you have like a huge dinner. So after the dinner, the wife's washing all the dishes, so there's nothing clean except like a princess cup. So she brings you a drink in a princess cup. It's fucked up, man. But the drink still tastes good, right? But listening to heavy metal while you have a princess cup. Not the not the correct way to listen to heavy metal. That's why you have to cheat. You have to cheat and you have to go online and find somebody who does a heavy metal cover of Let It Go. You know, in a like a screaming metal voice. Let it go, let it go. People with an English accent have an advantage because they sound smart. Well, I guess if I'm going to have to operate on a handicap today, so be it. But I want a good, just slugfest, you know? Sometimes you just wake up and you want a fucking slugfest. Coom City just got nuked. Stop diverting the chat. You're obfuscating. Stop obfuscating the chat. Stop it. I've not found the like feature for super chats, but I haven't looked, so that's probably why. Boom, 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 boom. Let's rumble, motherfucker. Got 2 tall beers, 1 for each hour of this carnage. I see Dotsovetsky is coping in the stream right now. It's too early for coping, bro. It's bad faith coping. So you're obfuscating the stream. Yeah, we have Lent. It's up to your priest if you're participating or not, though. Where the fuck is Troy? We're gonna have to have a 50K pizza party soon, huh? I think it's coming soon. 50K pizza party. A lot of you boys been here since we were, 500 sub channel. Just waiting patiently here for the degenerate link so that we can have this debate on degeneracy. Yeah, that's been a while, huh? What is it? Gravitian? That's been a while, bro. Yeah, we're still going to do the debate with Adam Green. Probably when I get back from the F&F podcast. Well, Sam, if you're going to don't get fired from work. I can't get any super chats from if you're not working, bro. Isn't it Christian Hernandez? Tam, you need to be a good pay pig for the Chris. You know, just take a fucking joke, you prick. You know? Just take a joke. Have a little fun. We can poke a little fun at ourselves. You know? Dickhead. Marcus gifts 5 Crucible memberships because he's awesome. Appreciate that very much. Yeah, Glenn Lawrence is going to guest moderate today. I was joking, Andrew. No, I was fucking joking. You fuck. All right. I'll take the L. I'll cope. I'll cope a little bit. I'll cope a little bit before the debate. Christian Hernandez. Already got the memberships rolling. We're doing this. Got the memberships going. Yeah, I don't give a shit about their drama. It doesn't mean anything to me. I'm here for some good old-fashioned fucking blood sports, baby. Yeah, okay, a little cope. A little bit of coping. That's fair, a little bit. It's not like a ton of cope, but, you know, Christian kind of messed me up in the chat earlier. He did. Wasn't very nice, Christian. Make me take an L before the debate even starts. Guy says, when does the show start? This is the show. We just watched this screen. Dumbass. Oh no, this chat's not undefeated. No. The chat's taken many L's from me. Now, do I think they're ahead on the L's? Have I taken more L's to chat than chat has taken from me? Yes. Okay, but it's 1 against, like, fucking 1,000. It's bullshit. Is this music copyright? Would we be fucking playing this music if it was copyrighted? You know what? Chat, just a bunch of fists. From now on, when somebody says something stupid, just a bunch of fists. You know, it's, hey, teaching that guy a lesson. Yeah, I think Troy's a nice guy. I don't have any issues with him at all. I just in the mood to have a nice, good old-fashioned, brutal slugfest of a debate. That's all. Yeah, take that, chatter. Yeah, how you like that? Needs to be a foot emoji, like you're kicking him while he's down. Nice foot emoji. Hey, stay down there, fucker. Troy's late for the debate because he was more likely to do that. Look at that, Chatter's getting curb stomped in the chat. He's getting curb stomped. He says, damn, I'm getting brutalized. I don't think you're making it out of this one, son. Any day now, Troy. Looking for that link. We moved it up because you can only stay an hour or something if we didn't. Okay, put up the white flag. Get him again. Get him again. You know, fuck him. Teach him a lesson. I'll teach you a lesson. What the hell? Okay, cool. He sent the link. I think we're going to do this finally here.
Troy, friends of the Audacity Network. Today we have a doozy for you. We are cross-platforming with Andrew Wilson from the Crucible, here to face Rule Zero's very own 007, the bad boy of London, Troy Francis. These two are going to be debating specific topics, and they have
It looks like degeneracy in the West is the topic.
Degeneracy in the West is the topic. So they are ready to start. Andrew, you wanted to open up with a statement?
Yeah, if you'll humor me, and then as we go through this, Troy,
Yes.
these usually go by Troy?
Yeah.
Okay. If at any point after this you want to question any part of this opener, you're welcome to, and we can just kind of dive into it if that's fine with you.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
Good stuff.
That's so Christian-like of you.
So, well, I got to light the cigarette first, right? Okay, so as we get into this debate on degeneracy in the West, I want to first thank my opponent for stepping into the arena. It's a tough thing to do, and my hat is literally off to him today, as you can see. My opponent and I have two distinct worldviews, which share a small subset of commonalities in the realm of the descriptive, but even there we disagree and disagree heavily. The first thing I'd like to point out is the idea of religious judgment on others, a point of contention I've noted that Troy has quite a bit. There's a lot of pushback I've seen from Mr. Francis towards Christians who point out holes in degenerate ideology. However, let me point out that Mr. Francis himself also engages in judgment as a necessity to apply any of his descriptors for objective reality. Example, X thing is a red flag, or based on X history, you should be cautious. Do I blame Mr. Francis for applying judgments with his descriptors? No. In fact, I encourage it, or they don't make any sense. I just think, to be consistent, he should extend this same grace to the religious. Next, on the issuance of degeneracy in the West and marriage specifically, I'd like to point out that while myself and Mr. Francis likely agree in state marriage being basically worthless in modernity, and the point of secular marriage being basically worthless at this point, I wonder why men like him and others who push what I would consider a degenerate worldview don't point out that Christian covenant marriage and adherence to religion greatly decreases the chances of marriages eroding to the tune of 50% or more across the board, including remarriage. This is due to the thing we can provide that red pill descriptists cannot provide. That is religious infrastructure. Religious infrastructure can provide and does provide the one access to the same kinds of social shaming descriptors Mr. Francis would like to see, but pretends for some reason no longer exist. They do indeed exist. However, they can only exist in communities that have must-dos instead of subjective paradigms like be fucking happy. Religious institutional authority seems to be the answer to the very problem of hypergamy, which is something I've seen Troy rail against. The reason I think that these solutions, even though proven as a metric for greatly decreasing risk, for instance, Catholics and Mormons, even in the raw data, stand out as being less likely to divorce. Why? Well, it's due to infrastructure of community, which can be used as a hammer to enforce roles through shame and outcast status. The very thing I see many on your side say we can never have again, and yet we have it now. I would like to see these views reconciled by Troy, and I hope we can have a productive, even if fiery, debate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, thank you for the thank you for framing the topic in that way. I mean, there's a lot of fascinating stuff to get into here. I mean, I think where do we start, really? I mean, I think in some ways you might possibly be underestimating the level of my degeneracy, because I think like a lot of the red pill
I don't think I am.
well, good. I mean, and I have to be super careful here, because I've just recently reconciled with this is a personal thing. It's got no real bearing on the debate, but I've just recently reconciled with my ex-girlfriend, and we're getting into a thing, and she's Catholic, so that kind of obviously might change things for me somewhat. But in terms of
wait, Troy, are you simping for your ex-girlfriend, bro?
Well, I mean, you could call it that. You could call it. I don't know. She's my one ISIS. But putting that to one side, basically, my worldview. The thing is right. So you got the stereotypical red pill worldview is look at all these hoes. Isn't this terrible? You know, it would be great if we could control their behavior and get them all off OnlyFans and, you know, back in the kitchen and blah, blah, blah. But we can't because it's never going to happen. And this is putting aside what you're talking about with the religious, you know, the covenant within religion. So therefore,
why is that never going to happen?
Well, no, I'm just saying that I'm just saying this might be the argument that some of the higher profile.
Oh yeah, okay, got it. But what about from your perspective specifically?
Well, my perspective as being, you know, because I've been like for most of my life, and certainly for the last 3 years, I've basically been single. I've been a bachelor. I've been somebody who enjoys going around and, you know, having sex and being promiscuous and not really getting into anything sort of serious. So in some ways, you know,
you have a bias, right?
Well, in some ways, the status quo has actually benefited someone like me, you know, and that's why. So often I'll go on these shows, like I'll go on Fresh and Fit, and there'll be like some OnlyFans girls there or something like that, and I'm not actually that critical of them. You know, I'm not really sitting there going, oh, I should like shaming them. And then ironically, I get criticism in the chat. You know, people are, Troy's a simp, blah, blah, blah. But it's not that. It's just more that I'm an individualist. And also, if you were going to if you were going to live that life, which is basically a life of promiscuity where you are dedicating yourself to sensual pleasure above all else, and I'm not saying that's a good thing, but if you were going to live that life, actually, the way things are at the moment kind of works pretty well. So
you're,
you know,
so hang on, I just want to make sure I get this right. You're a status quo coomer?
Well, I mean, it's coomer. I mean,
coomer, like just hedonic pleasure, have sex, have fun, you know, drink, drugs, rock and roll, right?
I've certainly been espousing that position for a period of time, and that's been relatively close to the reality. Because I mean, I think sometimes, look, you know, sometimes online people amp up their position a little bit, but certainly for the last few years, that kind of has been my position. It kind of has been the position of like, well, look, things are all a bit fucked, but the reality is, I do enjoy traveling. I do enjoy meeting different women. I do enjoy having sex. So actually, in many ways, the things that some of the red pill people complain about, I'm not really that bothered about because in many ways they enable that lifestyle. I think we have this big sort of conversation about the divide between the red pill people and the trads. But I think there is actually, even within the red pill community, I think there's a tradness there with the underlying thing of like, well, wouldn't it be so much better if we went back to the old ways? And I've always differed from that a little bit in the sense that I've been more, I think, nihilistic, really, in the sense of like, well, actually, I kind of quite, you know the phrase.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but maybe I can
enjoy the decline.
Yeah, maybe I can try this a different way.
Okay,
what's the distinction between your ideology and a feminist ideology?
Well, I mean, you might argue, I suppose, that the end result comes out similar, but I think the motivation for it is different. I think for me, the motivation would have been maximizing my sensual pleasure, you know, whereas for a feminist, the motivation is very different to that. You know, the motivation would be
well, I mean, so if we're talking about women's liberation, we're talking about sexual liberation, which is something you're clearly for, right? Because after all, you like having sex with them, right? So so sexual liberation is something that you're all for. That's the basis for feminist ideology, especially going back into the 60s. They have all of the egalitarianism, which I would guess that you're also for. What in the world would divide you from a feminist, sir?
Well, I think it's the intention, isn't it? I think it's the motivation. I mean, I actually, a friend of mine who's now sadly passed away, but he was like a dating coach, relatively sort of red pill guy called Tom Torero. He made a video which he never put up because he knew he'd get flamed for it, saying, you know, feminism's done me a great favor, or like I love feminism or something like that. For the reason that you're saying,
because sexual liberation made women into sluts, and you guys like fucking them, right?
Well, yeah, but I would still say there's a distinction in terms of motivation, because their motivation well, but I mean, but their motivation originally was equality. Then you could argue it became more than that. Then you could argue, people would say, well, third or fourth wave feminism now it's about supremacy, or getting rid of men's
Yeah, but
power.
it's grounded foundations in sexual liberation, egalitarianism. You are for, right?
Well, I mean, I'm. Again, I still believe, like you're saying, the outcome is the same because I approve of something that they also approve of, and so therefore the net result.
Yeah, so I just want to know what the distinction would be in the ideological format here, because it sounds to me like if it's to coom, women great, and in modernity, them cooming great for you, it sounds like it's just sexual revolution, right? Sounds like it's just 1960s sexual revolution, egalitarian, feminist ideology, Troy.
I mean, you still haven't, with respect, I mean, you still haven't acknowledged the point that I keep making, which I think the intention is different. Maybe you think that doesn't matter.
Okay, what's the distinction in intention?
Well, the distinction is that I'm a guy. I'm a heterosexual guy. I like having sex with a lot of different women. I like traveling around. The fact that the way society is now kind of facilitates that has been for me, a boon. But the motivation for me liking that is different from the motivation from the women, because the way the women are looking at it is more like about women's equality and other things as well. It's not just about.
Well, are
sex.
you against any of those things that they're for?
Am I against? Not particularly, because I'm also an individualist, right? I think where
feminists are also individualists, right? That's a heavy point of feminist ideology is individualism.
Where I do have a bit of an issue with feminism is that I don't really understand what the point of it is now, if that makes sense, because we've now got to a point where it seems like all of the aims that they would have had been achieved. And so,
are you happy that all those aims were achieved?
I mean, what, politically? I mean, you could
politically, socially. I mean, isn't it if you're talking about, for instance, your promiscuous sex, you're talking about promiscuous sex and sexual liberation, that led to this form of divorce, no-fault divorce, which creates the same incentives that you discuss as being bad for men inside the arena, and yet you yourself are actually advocating for this type of egalitarianism. So that's insane to me.
I would describe it, yes, as I would describe it, yes, as being overall bad for men. It would be great if we could turn the clock back and we could go back to a time when things were different and marriage was for life and people took it more seriously and so on and so forth. I do get that. However, now we're in a situation, but then the opposing sort of biological drive that I have within me, and I believe many men have within them, is that they also like a lot of variety. They also like fucking around. And so, it's a bit like when life hands you a lemon, make lemonade. And I mean, a benefit of this has been that, it's now probably one of the best times to be a bachelor in the entire history of the planet, especially if you travel around and you keep yourself in kind of
if you push feminist ideology for sexual liberation, it's going to be a fantastic time to be a bachelor. It's not going to be a fantastic time for men to have families, Troy. It's going to be a really bad time to do that.
Well, I don't disagree, but you're very keen. You're very keen for me to say, yeah, okay, I'm a feminist, and then you can sort of like do a gotcha. Yeah, Troy Francis, red pill guy, he's actually a feminist, which I don't agree with.
I'm actually surprised. Wait, hang on. There's no gotcha here. I was actually surprised. I thought when I asked you the question that we would be making progress as to what separates Troy Francis's ideology from second or third wave feminism. And I actually have not heard the answer to this question except motivation. But motivation, regardless of motivation, if I did or did not want to, let's say, harm somebody, but did, you still look at the result absent the motivation. Now, maybe you can say my motivations to support feminist ideology are different. Fine. But I don't understand the distinction between your ideology and a feminist.
Well, I mean, it depends how you're what aspects of second or third generation feminism.
Well, let me go through
it. Broadly speaking, it seems to me that feminism has become more and more anti-male. Okay, and that I don't support. Okay, so now in the United Kingdom, for example, You know, we see posters up on the London Underground, and men are almost by default treated as, you know, predators, or they are seen as, you know, toxic and all of that. And that, of course, I don't support because I'm a guy, right? So there are certainly aspects of modern feminism that I don't support.
Yeah, I understand when you get to what you're talking about there. Hang on, Troy. What you're talking about there is supremacy. You're saying I'm against supremacy. That's fine. You're against supremacy.
Yeah, so,
okay,
so
I'm not. But most people who would identify, almost all women who identify in modernity as feminists, are against female supremacy as well, or at least say that they are. The grounding foundational tenets of feminism are this: women's sexual liberation, 1, being able to basically be a skank unabridged without any form of shaming or opposition to it whatsoever inside of society. 2nd, you have the egalitarian movement. This was we get credit cards and debt and everything else too, just like men. 3rd would be things like we want to be in the military, in the draft. This is these forms of egalitarianism which came with 2nd and 3rd wave feminism. Are you against any of these things?
Sorry, say the thing about the draft again, the fact that they're not drafted.
No, the fact that they actually pushed so that so that they could get military positions, including inside of these combat roles. When you look at all of this together, all of this is feminism. Are you against any of this?
I don't really. I'm not particularly bothered about the military side of things, to be honest.
The sexual liberation side of it.
The sexual liberation side of it is a different thing, because, as I said, like if you look at masculine, you know, the biological imperative is, in fact, we could argue the toss about this, but fundamentally, many believe, and I believe, the fundamental masculine imperative is to go out there and spread your seed, right? Okay, we can argue that feminism has helped to, you know,
but wouldn't there also be a natural biological imperative for people to take care of their seed? That would be also baked in, right?
Yeah, there is. But like, there's one other thing that I want to sort of bring out here, which I think is perhaps important, which is that there's perhaps a divide here between individualism versus thinking about the good of society, collectivism. Now, you know, and you're gonna hate me for this, and you're gonna flame me or whatever. I've always been somewhat of an individualist. Okay, now you can say that's selfish. It's a bit nihilistic.
Well, what does that mean, individualism?
Well, I mean, like I've you know, I like Ayn Rand. I like Robert Greene. I've always
you mean libertarianism?
Exactly. Okay. So broadly speaking, my view on things has been coloured by that, in the sense of like, okay, so
does this include like pro-abortion?
I'm not pro-abortion. I mean, I don't have a huge view on abortion. It's never been something that's really touched my life. I mean, like my concerns have been very selfish. Okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's going to make me, you know, look toxic or whatever. But I do think that self-determination. Look, I didn't ask to get put on this planet. Okay, I didn't. You know, I've turned up here.
But every day that you're alive, you're asking to stay on it.
Well, I suppose so, or I just don't have the balls to put the guns.
Right. So this is the point, right? Is like every day that you, a functioning, rational being, continue to stay on this planet, and this is libertarian philosophy. You are choosing to be alive. You are choosing to be here. You are choosing this. So you could say, I didn't ask to be here, but yet you're still choosing to stay.
Well, I'm choosing to stay, but if I'm choosing to stay and the current societal conditions broadly support a lifestyle which I've quite enjoyed for a number of years, then, you know, for me personally, what's the big problem? Now, many people on the right, or, you know, who come from a more traditionalist sort of side of this would say, well, the problem is, what about society? What about, you know...
Yeah, what about society, Troy?
Well, what about, I'm going to be dead in 10 years, man. I'm not fucking bothered. Like, I mean, you know, like...
So it's just your ideology boils down to give me that shit? Really? Your ideology really boils down to give me that shit? Because, we're all going to fucking die one day. Come on, man.
I feel like you're shaming, Andrew. I feel like you're shaming me now, Andrew. I feel like you're shaming me.
I mean, a little bit. Like, you can't really be saying... My form of individualism requires both the egalitarianism between men and women, which is feminism, and then move on to say, on top of that, that it's basically just comes down to give me that shit. Like, don't you think that's a horrible philosophy, Troy?
I wouldn't assign a label to it really.
I think it's short and sweet. It's a good selling feature, you know.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily. I wouldn't assign
Pipe
that
down,
label.
Mod.
I think you could say. I think you could call it an amoral philosophy. I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, horrible sounds a little bit of a loaded term. I mean, you know, I like to treat people well. I like to treat people with respect. But and one of the issues that we've seen with the whole sort of argument or debate between the Christ pill versus the red pill people is the Christ pill people. And I'm not necessarily lumping you totally in with those people, but the Christ pill people say, well, look, we need to do all of these things so that we can make society better. Otherwise, society is fucked. And then, broadly speaking, you've got the red pill people on the other side saying, well, that sounds great, but it's never going to happen. And I suppose I've been more on that side of things.
Yeah, well, I've noted your Twitter exchanges with Chase, and he's trying to advocate for societal-wide prescriptions. Whether you think that they're good or not, there are good societal-wide prescriptions on our side that seem to negate many of these. Seem to negate many of these problems that you yourself point to as being problematic. But then when we get into your ideology itself, it seems to be based specifically around individualism, egalitarianism, and dare I say, feminism itself. And so the problem that I have with this kind of ideological divide is it seems like we have a much better stance. For instance, let me ask you a question. If I have a son, do you think I should raise him to be like you?
I mean, look, from a societal perspective, what benefit am I bringing to society apart from the wonderful insights that I bring on Twitter every day? Probably very little, you could argue. So maybe not.
No,
but
no. So no, the answer is no. So ultimately, when you're arguing with these guys on Twitter, Chase, these other dudes who are saying, when I have a son, I want him to not be like this. I want him to be something better, espound to something better in society that they can move towards. Why in the world wouldn't you endorse that message?
Because I don't think it's realistically going to happen. I mean, the problem with Chase, and listen, I don't have any major problem with Chase. I think he's an intelligent guy. I think he makes some good points. And some of the stuff he says, I don't disagree with. In an ideal world, if we could, but the problem is what Chase wants to do, you would have to have a mass fucking conversion of the entire the majority of the United States.
We need the guys
America.
like you to back us up. And guys like you who say if you have a son, you shouldn't raise him like me, should be backing us up, right?
But don't I have a right as an? I mean, what do you think about individualism, though? Don't I have a right as an individual?
Individualism and rights are a complete illusion. They're an illusion. We know that it's because it can be taken away from you in a second. You don't really have it, and even from your purview of an evolutionist, you know that has to be true because you believe in the concept of natural selection. What right do you have other than whatever nature assigns you? Nature will select your ass out. You have no right to even exist, right?
Well, I could get killed tomorrow. I could walk out in the street and get shot, but I don't see what point
rights,
that makes.
Rights are a collectivization of an idea of an entitlement absent duty. There is no such thing as these entitlements absent your own brain. And so when we look at, well, wait, if that's true, then we're not talking about collectivism. You can still keep forms of individualism inside of a society and still push for collective ideas that make the entire society, thus the individual, far better.
But what if people just want to have casual sex, though?
Yeah, what if people want to coom? So it's Gibbs me dad again. This is my whole problem, right? Think about how selfish the ideology is where you say, look, maybe society would be way better. Maybe we would have way more births. Maybe some of this feminism can be rolled back, but then I couldn't just fuck random skanks that I meet. Doesn't that sound awful? Like when you say it out loud, doesn't that really sound awful?
It doesn't sound very romantic. Some of these are lovely ladies, man.
Okay, well, no dunk on your ladies. Okay, I'm not saying that. Maybe they're the greatest people in the world. There's a bit of hyperbole there for shock value, but what I am saying is true. Is like random promiscuous sex. You don't want the whole world to burn so you can coom, right? That seems like a bad idea.
The whole world's burning anyway. But isn't the whole world burning anyway?
But it seems like because when people like me bring prescriptions to this and show the evidence for the prescription against the red pill prescriptions, not the descriptions, that I can't get them in any way, shape, or form to say, you know what, maybe just backing off on cooming a little bit and backing up the play of trying to get some kind of collective morality in society back is a good idea.
Yeah, but I mean, look, if I stop cooming, and if I stop, as you call it, if I stop cooming tomorrow, right, it's going to have zero impact on the fucking planet, right? Because I'm one dude living in London. It's statistically irrelevant what I do.
Well, you wanted me to point to how many times one man in history damn near took over the world? How many times one man in history was able to destroy 1/3, half of its own population? Single men have more of an effect bubble than you think. I'm a nobody from nowhere. Maybe you're a nobody from nowhere. We all are, right? But the point is that, like, look, no, you do have an effect. And the second that effect is projected, it seems that people sway with what they see, with what the emblems are, with what the messaging is. They can be swayed to that. And so, yeah, we need you on this side. We need you anti-coomer. We need you to be like, look, enough of this, right? That's what we need.
Well, I mean, listen, maybe my cooming days are coming to an end.
Yes.
I don't.
I hear like Catholic. I heard Catholic.
Exactly. Well, no, my girlfriend is Catholic, so I'm gonna have to address that side of things. If but no, I'm talking about arguments I've made in sort of previously and my position, my position. And listen, I will say this. I mean, some of it is somewhat hyperbole in order to trigger people and just because I kind of find it funny and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I'm not using that. I'm not using that as an excuse, but there is a little bit of an element of that. But broadly speaking,
I think that's fine. I think, in fact, some of the best things that you can do to trigger people for satire and things like this, but we can still see the subtext behind the satire. So we still know what the messaging is, even if it has a satirical angle. Pearl's a master at this, a master of satirically angling towards a message, but we can still see the message. That's why she has such a high following, right? We can still see the same messaging from you, which is, it just seems to me. And I tried to break it down as I was going over your belief structure last night. And I'm like, I can't not find a delineation between you, first, second, or even third wave feminists, and why you would be angry or upset or ever say a word about Christ pill prescriptions, knowing that those seemingly will address many of these issues that you point out on your show as being problematic for society. I just don't understand, man.
Well, I think so. I mean, let's say something like, say, hypergamy, right? So you could say, okay, so women have got these incredibly high standards. So now it's very, very hard for, regular guys to find girlfriends and to find a woman who's going to stand by them and all that kind of stuff. Right. Okay. So that you could say is a problem, I guess, it's been created because presumably that was less of a problem before when we lived in this much more structured society.
Well, that's really weird then, Troy. That's a point against you to say that hypergamy is part of ontology, but yet we can live in a social paradigm where it's not a problem.
Well, but it's not a problem for everybody. And so what we teach guys to do is to say, okay, but you can overcome the problem if you ascend and you get towards, whatever the mythical number is, the top 20% or whatever. Because actually, the dudes who are sort of at that, and look, I'm not claiming to be, I haven't got a Bugatti parked outside or anything like that. But, if you can get to a certain level, then actually the access you can get is very, very good. And once again, the fundamental problem that I have with this is, I suppose, is, what's the term for this? But it's the division between the spiritual versus the bestial or the body or the biological.
Yeah, but let's dive into that then. So,
the biological urge remains.
So when you're talking about hypergamy in general, starting with that, you would make the affirmative claim that hypergamy even 60 or 70 years ago was not problematic inside of American society.
Well, I think it always existed. I think it's got worse.
Okay, yeah, well, okay, it was at least under control inside of American society. What were the conditions which made it under control?
But how happy were people, though?
On the happiness index, they were much happier. Right now, mental illness rates are through the roof, especially for women.
You have to define what control is, though?
Sorry?
For that?
What?
Wouldn't you have to define under control, what that means?
Yes, so you looked at most marriages did not fail, most. That was not a problem. Inside of relationships, they also were much more long-lasting and robust, especially because you had church intervention. You can look at even what you would consider a metric for hedonic happiness, which would be things like mental illness, how many times you're checked in the hospital, the physical health of people. The physical health of people is worse than it's ever been with obesity. Mental illness is through the roof. You have divorce rates through the roof. all of these things combined. So the distinction from the society that you're looking at just 60 years ago, where hypergamy was under control, it seems that it was the religious element which kept it under control.
No, I think I don't disagree with that. I think you know, if you look at the history of, like, say, the 20th century and into obviously the 21st century, the erosion of religion in Western society has clearly had a huge impact on society.
And what eroded it?
Sorry?
Feminism eroded it. Feminism's what destroyed it. The same ideological practices that you, as a libertarian, essentially believe in.
But was it entirely feminism? I mean, come on, man.
It was a mixture. It was a mixture of two things. Yes, Marxism and feminism, which became Marxist feminism. Yes, but those were the two components which destroyed the West.
Well, but okay, but are we? I just want to question here. Are you guys saying that hypergamy is bad? Are you putting a negative connotation?
Well, for one thing, I'm not certain that hypergamy itself even exists as it's being explained as a descriptor. But under the assumption that it is true, that it is real, I'm just going to grant that it is. It still seemingly is under control even now in religious nations, and was under control in this very nation just 60 years ago.
What's that statistic that Pearl always comes out with? Of something like 1 in 4, you know, church marriages end in divorce. I mean,
yes, and that statistic is incorrect. So let's take a look here, and I can show you. You can look under the Harvard did a massive study on this. Release date was 2018, where they made a comparison of people who had high religiosity versus low religiosity. Inside of this comparison, they piggybacked on studies going all the way back to 1984, where this was studied on in-group dynamics, meaning they would take like nurses and check it against nurses, and they would check, this particular dynamic of people or this subset of people. So they piggybacked all of this, and they created a meta-analysis, which for sociology is the highest form they can possibly provide for any type of standard, because sociology is usually garbage. But what they did find, and every single sociological study has looked at this, has found the more religious and the more religiosity there is, the less likely you have divorce, the less likely you have splits. And the reason for that, Troy, is because of the community aspect, which is the thing that the religious can provide. It's the chink in the red pill armor, and it always has been. The red pill cannot provide community. Because of that, they cannot combat this issue. Only the religious can.
Well, I saw somebody making a video. I think it was Ali D, or I think is her name now. And
Ali's great.
And she was talking about this, and she was talking about the fact that she was talking about the covenant issue within religion, and how that is the thing that holds marriages together. Because if you start to step out or something starts to go wrong, then the people in the church are going to come and talk to you and everything like that. So I do get that, but again, we come back to the same problem.
Well, hang on. Before we get into the next thing, let's stay on this point for just a second. What you just said there was key. Do you agree with me that people who come from single-family households generally have worse outcomes? Just generally speaking.
Yeah, generally, yeah.
Just generally. Yeah. I'm not saying always, okay? So we're in agreement on that. Wouldn't you say the reason for that is because of the lack of community basis? Meaning that if you have two parents inside of the household, the community structure for you, the child, is way better. Why wouldn't that also apply to your community structure external to that? You are who you associate with. You're a net of your friends. You're a net of your social circles. They influence everything about you. So if the influencers who are around you and are providing the community are providing a strong moral foundation, and on top of that moral foundation are actually interceding on your behalf to prop you up, even if you're having bad financial times, or you're having trouble in your marriages, based around sex, for instance, or any number of these different problems, wouldn't you say that having a community that held you up would be far superior to the alternative?
Well, it may well be, but the problem is it ever going to happen?
And it's happening now. The data shows that it happens now, and that's what we're trying to push towards. We're trying to push society that way.
I get that, and it's a laudable thing to try to do. But is it realistic? I mean, and this is my issue with people like Chase and so on. I mean, yeah, I get it, but it seems to me that the change in society would have to be so tumultuous to make it work.
It would need to be incremental.
It's almost not even worth
talking. So let's dive into this. Well, this is a separate argument.
Frame something up here about this. Like, are you guys talking about the outcome from the Christ pill would be
Well,
incremental as in
right now
time?
we're diving into this other aspect. So the argument, if I can steel man it just to make sure I have it correct from you, your argument is, look, things are so bad and they're so bleak. You can't put the toothpaste back into the toothpaste tube, right? You can't do it. It's too bad. Is that about right? Is that a good summarization?
What my argument would be? Broadly, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So to address this, just so that you understand, Marxist feminists were able to get us here incrementally over time. It was not an overnight thing. It took 60, 70 years of working diligently towards the goal. I'm not saying that we can have an overnight successful society, nor should we even put that in people's heads because it's dynamically stupid. But what I am saying is that you can make incremental changes based on people making slight lifestyle modifications to work towards that more noble goal. And yes, that not only can be done, but the reason I have proof that it can be done is because the Marxists did it to us. Why can't we do the same exact thing in reverse? Why can't we use the same weapons they used back against them? And the only argument that you guys seem to have is because I want to coom, bro. Because I want to go help women, right?
Well,
and it's like, that, from my perspective, that's insanity.
Well, I wouldn't say it's insanity. I mean, I would say that it is a fundamental human drive, and it's very hard to I mean, I get it. You know, what you would probably say. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you would probably say, look, you need to exercise self-control because there is something more important at stake here, which is the future of civilization.
I wouldn't even say that. You know what I would say? I'd say go ahead and coom and this and that. But the guys who are trying to make the attempt to push towards, don't criticize them. Don't attack them. And don't get in their way because ultimately they're trying to make the society that you yourself right now are critiquing and say that you're the victim of. And you have to coom inside of it.
Well, I'm critiquing it to some extent, but I'm not critiquing it that much because, as I said at the beginning, in many ways it's kind of benefited me. You know, I'm not one of these people who's sitting around going, "Oh, look at these 304s and all of that," really, because it's sort of like, you know, I don't have a huge problem with 304s to be fair. So
right,
it's
a net benefit to you, right?
well, exactly. Like I said, I mean, you know, it's kind of a nihilistic sort of pose, I suppose. But I mean, but again,
Troy, would it really be hard to just be like, look, I don't agree that we maybe can even do this, or incrementally, I don't want to be part of it. But those guys are doing good work, and they are trying to shift the Overton window. And because of that, I'm not going to get in the way. I'm not going to criticize. I'm not going to attack. Instead, I'll do my own thing. I'll talk to people in my own way, but I'm not going to attack Chase. I'm not going to attack these guys who are trying their hardest to at least move it that direction. That's where the big criticism comes, right? It's like there's a collection of and I see this everywhere in the red pill space. The Christ pill is cucked pill. The Christ pill is this, Christ pill is that. And yet, when we have the actual slug out, the slugfest, I'm like, what are you bringing to the table? And all I hear is feminism.
Well, I think I get what you're saying. I think it's very, I think it's very convenient rhetorically for you to label it as feminism. I reject.
If you can give me a single delineation, I want to hear it.
My motivation is not feminist motivation.
Yeah, but again, when you speak to motivation, can you give me a distinction in outcome?
I mean, well, like how important do you think outcome is? I mean, like there are many things that feminists would want that I don't want.
What?
So, for example, you know, there are feminists who would probably not want me to have a YouTube channel. There are
but that goes back to supremacy. In modernity, feminists do not claim supremacy, though I agree with you. My olive branch to you is that fourth wave feminism has become about female supremacy. I don't disagree with that at all. But between third, second, and first wave feminism, which has led to this outcome, what in the world can you possibly give me that would delineate you from that ideology?
Well, we'd have to go through the whole fundamentals. I mean, is it bad that women can work? Is it bad that women can vote? I mean, I've got one of Pearl's t-shirts in the.
Is it?
Well,
is it?
Is it bad women can vote? I personally don't have a huge problem with women voting. Really, I've got the t-shirt.
So where's the delineation? That's my question. Like, where's the delineation?
Because I just feel like you are. I feel like it's a rhetorical device to conflate two things.
I was not expecting at all that you wouldn't have a quick, fast. Here's where I'm different. Here's where I'm different. Here's where I'm different. I thought we'd be tangling with those. I did not actually realize that there would be a concession that your ideology and feminist ideology, I can't find a dividing point, and I'm looking for it. And in good faith and charitability, let's walk through it.
Once again, that's a nice rhetorical flourish that you've just given, but my answer remains the same. I'm a heterosexual guy. I'm fundamentally.
That's the best part.
Yeah, I'm fundamentally driven to want to sleep with lots of different women. Okay, to spread my seed, whatever you want to call it. Yes, I agree. As aspects of feminism have helped to enable that. That doesn't make me a feminist. That just means that I have benefited from certain aspects of feminism. But feminism was about much more than that. Whether I agree with women having the vote or any of that shit, it's kind of irrelevant, really, because that's not even my area of interest. Now, yes, you can say, okay, yeah, right, but the outcomes are the same. I get that point. I still don't believe that makes me a feminist.
What do you believe does make a person a feminist?
Certainly, then when we start talking about second and third and fourth wave feminism, and you say, well, that's just supremacy. Well, no, I mean, if we're talking about feminism, that is feminism. There are now women, who would probably want to, make it illegal for. In fact, I think it was Chris.
Yes, hang on. You're right that there should be a delineation made between each feminist wave and what the particulars. But hang on. I'm almost done.
Yeah.
And what the particulars are of those waves, so that you, in fairness, can have a point to make a delineation between yourself and those waves. However, to say that it's all the same would be like saying Christianity is all the same, or like saying progressivism is all the same. Of course it's not. So particulars are important. When we're talking about particulars, the first wave feminism was based around the egalitarianism. Second wave feminism was based around the sexual revolution, and the third wave feminism was about the introduction of widespread Marxism and leftist ideology. The two piggybacks, first wave feminism and second wave feminism, egalitarianism and sexual revolution, definitely led to the Marxist wave, which came with the third wave. Can you give me the delineation?
How would you say the Marxist wave expressed itself then? Are you talking about things like, you're talking about more political aspects then, right?
It manifested itself through the key point that you've already described yourself as, individualism. That was the manifestation of Marxist feminism, was that on the individual level, men and women were interchangeable widgets, essentially, and that they should have the exact same rights and freedoms and everything else that men have. And that was its manifestation, and I can't see the delineation here is my problem.
What about Nietzsche? What about Nietzsche? What about Camus? What about existentialism? Has this got nothing to do? It's all feminism. I mean,
well, if it's Nietzsche and we're talking about a will to power, then in this particular case, I'm wondering why it is that those who have the will to try to get into power, you're trying to obstruct.
Well, because the power that they want is, I mean, look, I take your point, and listen, as I've said, I haven't really got any huge problem really with somebody like Chase or whatever. I mean, it's kind of quite funny to, have a bit of banter and stuff. He's doing his thing. He's an intelligent guy, whatever. Okay, fine. But if he actually created the society that he wants to create, if we woke up tomorrow and we were in the Christ Pill society, would I enjoy that as much as my current life? I don't know. I mean, it's very hard to say. I would say possibly not.
Don't you think the worst thing we could do is base society on what Troy Francis?
Well, no, but
what makes him feel good?
No, but that's never going to happen, right? I mean, that is what's the logical fallacy? It's reductio ad absurdum or whatever you.
It's
call
not.
It, right?
It's not.
Because come on, Andrew, you know as well as I do.
It's not a
whatever the fuck.
Hang on.
No, because whatever the fuck I say, it doesn't matter. Like, I've got a very small channel anyway, so But even if I had a 1 million person channel or on Paul's channel, whatever the fuck I say, it doesn't fucking matter. The reality is, most guys are still going to go out. Most guys are still going to get married. Most guys are still going to have kids. Okay, so
that's actually the fallacy. So I didn't give you a reductio ad absurdum. What you did was you gave me an argument ad populum. You said because most people are going to do this, therefore it should be done. That's the insanity. Is an argument ad populum.
It should be done. I'm just saying it is going to be done. So the fact that
there's no guarantee that it is going to be done. I take issue with that. I think that is the fallacious argument, is an argument ad populum, because most men will do this. That means that most men will do this. And it's like, no, we haven't established that most men will do this depending on the circumstances they find themselves in society, because they didn't always do this.
I suppose. Well, look. Okay. I suppose marriage is becoming less popular, but we know the reasons for that. They're not even necessarily religious. They're more to do with the law and the state, aren't they? But the point I'm making though is that when I get criticism from people will say, well, if everyone acted like you, then society would cease to function. And to me, that's an absurd argument, because the reality is it's never going to fucking happen. It's just never going to happen.
Yeah, well, that's again. In this particular case, saying it's never going to happen, that's not an argument. That's an opinion. So
it's not an opinion. It's true.
There's no truth to saying that's not ever going to happen. Do you think in Weimar? Hang on. Do you think in the Weimar Republic that they said, "Oh, well, within 5 years we're going to have a dictator who turns all of this around"? No, they didn't say that shit. Or we're going to have a dictator that tries to storm the world? No, they didn't say any of that. Right? They would have said that'll never happen. That's an absurd. That's why you can't make those kinds of arguments, because those are absurd arguments. What we're looking for here instead is this: if you think that it will never happen, tell me why it won't, and then I can have a good argument with you on whether or not that's true.
Because okay, so the reason it won't happen is because if I'm positing myself as kind of a degenerate bachelor who doesn't really want to settle down, who's not really looking to have kids and family and stuff like that, actually, the truth is that is an outlier position, because most guys do want that. And that's the reason why most guys in the red pill have the problems with hypergamy in current society that you're describing. That's why a lot of these guys are like, well, this is all bullshit.
But now you're arguing against yourself. So now,
no, I'm not.
So you just said most guys are going to go out and be promiscuous, but on the other hand, most guys want to have a family and children?
Well, no, I'm saying I'm distinguishing myself from certain other voices in the red pill, because, like I said to you before, I think a lot of people within the red pill umbrella, you would probably not describe them as trad, but I think there's a trad element to them. You've got people, because that's why they're criticizing.
Yeah, I agree that they would be more on the right if you would consider right to be more trad.
I'm not. I mean, I don't consider myself, like I said, more libertarian, if anything. But I mean, as I said, I mean, my position has been more of an individualist, rather than somebody who is saying, well, wouldn't society be so much better if we could get rid of all these OnlyFans girls? Which I think, and then when
wouldn't it be?
Well, yeah, probably.
Yeah. So why not say that? Well,
I don't subscribe to OnlyFans, but no, when Chase made the argument that isn't it hypocritical that these red pill guys, they're all complaining about hoes and all that kind of stuff, or they're encouraging guys to sleep with as many women as possible, but they're also saying marry a virgin and all that kind of thing. I do get his point, and I don't think there's validity to that point. But this isn't special pleading here, but that's not really an argument I've made, because I've always been a dating coach, and I'm getting on a bit now, Andrew. You won't believe, I'm nearly half a century on this fucking planet, and
well, may you have 50 more years, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Even though I look so wonderfully young, but I've
over 35.
Well, I mean, at least one of us is aging well. But anyway, go ahead, man.
Well, I gave up. I had the cigarettes last year. I put down the cigarettes again last year. But anyway.
Maybe after this debate, you'll pick them back up.
Mate, I'm gonna have one now. But the point is, I suppose, what I've done for most of my, if you want to dignify as a career, is really teaching guys, okay, these are some things you can do in order to meet women and to get laid. But I've never personally, and look, this may change because I'm getting on a bit. I'm with a very cool girl. We have a great thing going on. Everyone changes. Maybe people at some point.
But why settle down if you could just keep cooming, bro?
Well, there is that argument. There is that argument. I do believe, I'm a kind of a cynical romantic in a way. I do believe there are people who are special. I do believe there are connections between certain people that are special, and that is worth fostering. I don't think it happens very often. I don't think it happens on the boat party in Miami necessarily, but sometimes you meet people and there's something there. So it's like, okay, fine, let's explore this. But I mean, putting that to one side, I mean, I haven't been one of those people. I came more from what you might call the pickup artist, the dating coach sort of side of things, which is related to the red pill, but it's slightly separate. Where the emphasis.
So isn't there? So listen, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to phrase this the best way possible because you are a nice guy, you're a likable guy, but I do have to ask this question. Doesn't it seem intuitive to people then that you would have a vested interest as one of these coaches to push this kind of lifestyle, even if you yourself don't really agree with it?
Well, I would. It's not that I don't agree with it, and I think this is probably the heart of our fundamental disagreement, because I what I'm hearing, what I suspect you think, I would imagine, that going around and having promiscuous sex and not committing to somebody, and I don't know what your opinion is on sex before marriage, but I would imagine that you think that is a bad thing to do, or a sinful thing to do, or an unchristian thing to do. Okay, I'm personally,
I think from an outcomes benefit, from whatever moral standpoint you have, it would still be a bad thing. It would still ultimately you're pushing the paradigm the opposite direction from what men really want to see as a change in society. And you yourself speak about this constantly, about what men really desire, what they want, what they're looking for, this kind of thing. But how could it possibly be that if you're playing the field and you have this overwhelming amount of data on the other side showing that these institutions can really create a grounding foundation in society to really help people get through these really hard times in marriages, keep hypergamy under control, and yet it seems like you selectively leave that away and move only towards the narratives which support coomerism, right? Coom. And it's like, from my perspective, I think if that's the best that you have, and the best that you have is to say, even if you had a son, you shouldn't raise him to grow up to be like me. Why in the world would we want to move towards that philosophy? That's doesn't it just sound intuitively terrible?
Well, firstly, when you're saying coomerism, I mean, I often understand it as masturbation. So what are you saying? You're talking about like indiscriminate sex.
Yeah, just indiscriminate sex, promiscuity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Hey, sex, drugs, rock and roll, that kind of thing.
Is it like the male spinner? Is it, you're calling him the male spinner?
Well, like here, I'll demonstrate it. I'll demonstrate what I mean by it. Troy, do you have any problem with open relationships?
I personally wouldn't be in an open. Well,
yeah, no,
I wouldn't.
Just moral issues. Do you have any moral issue with an open relationship?
I don't have a huge moral issue with it.
Do you have any moral issue at all with like threesomes, foursomes, fivesomes, orgies? No. Do you have any moral issue with people having multiple wives?
No. I mean, again, it wouldn't be my bag.
So when I say coomer, what we're saying is that you don't really have any type of objection of any kind towards any sexual relationships or sexual dynamics that people decide that they want to place inside of their own lives, regardless of what the outcomes could be to society. That's a coomer.
Okay, well, fine. But I mean, obviously people who, we know some, people who've converted to the other side, people who've converted to Islam. I mean, I'm sure they would, I don't really want to get into that whole topic, but they would have their own view. I know there are people on that side of the fence who believe that is a better society than we've got here. So, I mean, I don't know how you would answer that. I mean, that's one aspect of what you mentioned. Having threesomes.
The problem then is the loaded term of better. I'm not sure which thing is better. If I look at Eastern societies where there's Eastern Christianity, that seems better. Seems like there's almost no homosexuality. It seems like female hypergamy is kept under control in a very big way. It seems like they're staunchly conservative and they kind of move around family dynamics and family values. You're talking about Islam, where they literally require the women to wear burqas and walk around with another male. Yes, I can agree with you. That seems to be an extreme to Christian ethics, right? But when we're discussing what's better, even that alternative seems like it's less societally destructive than what is being proposed by the lifestyle which you live and then teach, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, I don't disagree. But again, it comes down to the argument of like, if everybody acted like I acted, then society would be a complete shit show. And yes, that's entirely correct. But once again, the truth is it's not going to happen because firstly, most, to be honest, I mean, most guys don't even want to do it. That's my impression anyway. I mean, if you're a dating coach, most guys that come to myself and to other people I work with, they're not even saying, hey, how can I become this amazing player and go around and sleep with 100 girls or anything. Most guys just want to find a girlfriend, to be honest. So
listen. I'm gonna tell you an old adage in Christianity.
Yeah.
Right. My wife said this once on Tucker Carlson. It was one of the proudest moments of my life. She said, "Let all that was used for evil now be used for good." You can be teaching an ideology which I consider to be ultimately an evil ideology. That does not even make you an evil person. Nor do I think that you can't have good come out of even an evil ideology, as I can give you multiple examples of where that happens. But that doesn't make it any less of an evil ideology. So if you say, this does help men, and you can give me examples, I would agree with you. There's probably tons of men who've been helped by your program to find a girlfriend, to find a significant other, this type of thing. I'm not taking that away from you. What I am trying to take away from you, though, is this idea that counter-signaling those who are trying to move society in a way which we can move the degeneracy back. And it is possible to do, and we have the data to prove we can do it. That counter-signaling, I think, is the most unproductive thing you can do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I take that on board. I mean, as I say, I mean, I think, as you know, I mean, I think the social media space, there's a bit of rough and tumble. I mean, sometimes it's kind of, I think it's sort of, there is a mischievous element in me where I quite like to just sometimes just post a bit, and it's an easy thing.
Yeah, Look, I like shit posting too, right?
Here's the thing. Here's the question though about this. Aren't they just marketing each other? Aren't they doing the same thing? Like I've seen a lot of Tim Gordon stuff and how he takes things way to the extreme, saying that red pills bunch of Muslim non-white Americans, like he makes comments like that. Isn't that just as bad?
Well, I don't think it's a good idea for us, instead of extrapolating as to what this guy over here says or this guy over here says or what the broader ideology is that's supposedly proposed. I think it's better for us to have these kinds of conversations and debates individually so that we can get to the individual ideology, which is backing whatever this kind of core overt umbrella is for the rest of it. I think that's far better so that we can get to the heart, not of necessarily what the umbrella is, but what each person is actually advocating within that umbrella.
But I mean, Andrew, presumably, I mean, you would say, so what if we looked about it like this? What if I said, listen, I'm actually a pretty decent guy. I mean, okay, we talk about, the bad boy stuff and the dark triad, and that's attractive and shit like
except
that.
Except for the Coomerism. You're a good guy, except you're a Coomer, right?
Well, I'm a Coomer, yeah.
Okay, you're a
Coomer. But no, so like if I'm dating somebody, I'm going to treat her well. I'm going to, obviously sometimes things happen and maybe so, but in general, my intentions are good. We might have a sexual experience. We might be together for a period of time. I've also been in longer term relationships that have ended for various different reasons. I mean, is there no way in your worldview that could be seen as long as the people have good well, I suppose you're going to argue what good intentions are.
Where do the good intentions lead us, Troy?
Well, I mean, and many women also, they enjoy, as you know, dating different guys,
sure.
the 304 thing, right? Is that genuinely in your worldview such a bad thing? Is there no way to square these two things?
You can't listen.
Like,
society is either going to operate under a model that men and women are interchangeable widgets, or it's not. There is not ever going to be an in-between. The reason that the Christ pill and the red pill, as it's called, I don't subscribe to whatever this Christ pill is. I think it's just like the red pill. I don't believe it's an actual thing, but rather it's a key core of individuals who are being pointed at as providing these individual ideologies, and they take an umbrella term effect to it so that they can lump everything in together, because as you know, lumping everything in together makes it easier to attack. Right? Makes it far easier to attack.
Yeah.
So you can straw man people to death if you lump all of these individuals into a similar category, and then you're attacking all of them at once, right? Even if they all hold completely different views. So I don't subscribe to this idea of red pill, Christ pill. Instead, I'm attacking specifically here in this debate Troy Francis's ideology. Troy Francis and what he thinks and why he thinks that. And I think that's a far better mode so that we can determine what is true and what is not true and the dissimilarity in our ideology as we go through this.
Well, yes. And I mean, you know, my version of it is arguably worse than than even some of the other Red Pill people that you've probably talked to in a way, because my version of it, as I've said, has actually in the past been quite selfish. The only thing that I would say to mitigate that, or to, you know, maybe excuse myself a little bit, is that, you know, it's also been done, I think, with, you know, as much care and respect for other people as possible. I haven't gone out to deliberately hurt people. I've sought to treat people well and everything else. But, you know, I mean, there is an attitude to life. I mean, if you look at if you subscribed to, say, a more you know, existential view of life, I suppose, or existential view of life, or maybe even a more nihilistic view of life, where you say, okay, there is no purpose to this, right? We're here randomly, so there are.
And that's your view, right?
Well, I mean, it has been my view. So,
in what world would that ever be good for people, though?
Well, I'm not saying it's
like
good.
It's one of the most purposeless driven lives. Just say, this is the stake that you have, and this is all you have. So you know what?
Well, no,
just go with the flow, bro. Let's just do what we all want and coom all day. And I see when you're engaging on this particular topic between the Christ pill, the red pill, we'll just call them that, you know, so that we have this umbrella term. Even though I would prefer not to use it. I think it gives the general idea when you're kind of going after these Christians on Twitter and things like this. These guys are trying their hardest to make a great effect, and they're just constantly countermanded, countersignaled, and attacked. Not just now by leftist scum and feminists, but now by some of you guys who are like, you should be on our side, not us on yours. You should be on our side. We're trying to actually affect the real change that you're after. And ours is better. I mean, it's clearly demonstrably better than just, hey man, live by the seat of your pants and coom. That's a bad ideology.
But it's not necessarily just that, though, because I mean, Camus would say, you know, you create your own, like, life is fundamentally absurd. Okay, I'm not saying like just as a thought experiment. I know you don't believe this, but let's, you know, like the absurdist belief is life is fundamentally absurd, that it's random. There is no reason for us to be here. Okay.
I don't think you're an absurdist, are you?
Well, I mean, you know, I've read a lot of Camus. I've read The Myth of Sisyphus many times, which is a great book. Or people should go and read that.
It's fun, right? But like, you're not hey, murder's absurd. You don't think murder's absurd.
Well, no, but the point is,
right.
So he would say, the answer is you go and create your own meaning. Now, the answer for me, as much as you might not believe this, is not just cooming. I mean, cooming is one thing that I quite like doing, but there are, you know, but there are other things as well. I mean, there is creating content, there is writing,
there's reading, you know, there's video game playing, there's whatever other hobbies you have, golfing.
Well, you can call them hobbies, but I mean, you know, I wrote a novel last year. I mean, it obviously didn't sell anything because nobody's gonna buy, you know, shit like that. But I mean, the point is, you can look at life and you can say, okay, I'm now going to create my own meaning from this. And also as well, it could even be, the other thing as well, it could be helping people. It could be helping people in your community. It could be helping people locally. All right. You know,
well, where's the community building? So if I were to ask you, when we're talking about the red pill or the red pill ideology, building actual structured community that have its own forms of laws and orders and things like this that you must obey, or else you're ostracized from the community. Can you point one of those out to me anywhere?
Yeah, the war room. Andrew Tate kicked out like half the people because they didn't follow the rules. He was doing exactly that. I wasn't a member. No, I mean,
IRL real communities that exist where people can touch each other. They can be physical. They can share beers together. They can help each other out financially. They can help each other have roofs over their head. They can really take good care of each other. That's a thing that you can find within an ecclesiastical authority of a church. You can't find that anywhere in these communities. How could that possibly ever be superior?
Well, I mean, people are trying to do that kind of thing. I mean, there are people who make retreats. And
but why try when it already exists? It's already there.
because then
you just got to point. You just got to point it out to people, right? It's right there.
But then you have to buy into religion. You have to take on religious belief,
and you have to take on the moral parameters of that and the things that would be more helpful to society, and you get all those great pragmatic benefits on top of that. It sounds like it's everything you ever could have wanted, and yet there's still a resistance.
Except smashing a load of random birds.
Well, except the fact that you can't coom. I mean, really, except the fact that you can't coom, right? That's really, when you get down to it, this is what Chase is trying to argue. And I love Chase. I don't think he's a great debater, but I love the guy. I think he's a great guy, okay?
Yeah.
And here's the thing. He is trying to articulate this concept, and he's trying to do it the best way that he possibly can. He's saying this already exists for you. You can already point people to this, and instead you counter-signal it because you say, there's particulars which exist inside of this worldview which will not allow you to be a fucking degenerate. That's the problem.
Well, degenerate's a very loaded term, isn't it? That people like to use.
Coomer. I mean, let's just say coomer.
That is.
Can I ask a question about both worldviews? How do either worldview oppose or provide any benefit or immediate benefit? Like, if
you mean to a person, to a man,
to an individual, or to a group of people,
well, let's just say
what literal evidence do we have?
So here's what you get as an immediate benefit within the parameters of Christianity. You immediately have a 2,000-year-old tried, true, and tested moral prerogative, which is then placed upon you for how you ought to live your life. You have an authority which exists, which can assist you in all of your living situations, period, across the board. That doesn't mean that they always will. It's not a place that you go for handouts. I'm just saying that there's a community which then exists, which can help to support you in all walks of your life. None of these things which can be produced by the other side of this argument. This is why I have such a problem with it. It's an Achilles heel for the red pill.
But wouldn't you say, look, to be fair, wouldn't you say that the red pill has massively pushed male self-improvement? So you've got fresh and fit.
But for the purpose of what? To fuck more women?
Well, partly, but also to the purpose to level up as a guy, because there's also
level up to do what?
Well, I mean, I go back to the Camus kind of argument, which is, I think self-improvement, I think, can be an end in itself. We are here. We might as well make ourselves.
But that would be Kantian. Those are universal ethics, and you're an individualist. So if you say if it's an end in itself, the Kantian ethicist would say.
But why is that not individualist? Like if I train every morning because
Kantian ethics works as a universal. It's deontological. That means universal. It's a universal ethical system which states you cannot do this thing ever. Universally, it's always bad to do. That is a deontological set, which is similar to Christianity. In fact, Kant himself utilized Christianity to come up with his ethical system and just removed all that God stuff he didn't like. So libertarianism, though, the non-aggression principle, that does not fall in with an end of itself. It's not a categorical imperative. So as we take kind of a bird's eye view of this and we look at it, you recognize real quick there's a shortcoming. And it kind of smacks you across the face, which is an end in itself would be a universal praxis for this is good. What are we doing this universal improvement for? What is it for?
And again, this is going to sound very nihilistic and you're not going to agree, but what if there is no ultimate point? I mean, I'm going to be,
then it's not an end. If there's no ultimate point, then it's not an end in and of itself.
Well, there is an end because I'm going to die, and then I'm going to lose. I'm going to not be conscious anymore, and then
but that's not an end in and of itself for self-improvement. You would die even if you did no self-improvement.
I die with a better body. Like I might die.
Yeah, but why would that be an end in and of itself that we would value? You're going to die either way, right? This is the problem with this. This ideology is actually nihilism. A little bit of Kantianism smuggled in there, but the universal itself as an end makes no sense. There should be some reason that you're doing this, some ultimate higher reason.
I don't disagree that my personal take on this is it has probably been somewhat more nihilistic even than other people in the space, right? I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you on that. And having said that, what I will also say is that, and this is where it becomes sort of complex, because the truth of the matter is, as you guys would say, actually going out and just randomly smashing a bunch of girls and living this very sort of what you'd call degenerate lifestyle also doesn't bring you happiness. I do, and believe me,
you're kind of arguing against yourself again, bro.
Well, I'm arguing against myself because I think that life is complicated. I don't think it's black and white, and I don't.
That I agree with. That I agree with.
And I think I'm still figuring. Look, if I'm being transparent, I think I'm probably still figuring things out. However, I do come back to the thing that
what do red pillars say when women say we're just trying to figure things out? That's hoe speak, right? Don't they say that that's hoe speak? Hey, I'm just working on myself. I'm just trying to figure stuff out. Don't they say that's hoe speak, right? For I want to go out and ride the cock carousel, right? Is that what they say?
I get a pass because I'm a guy, though.
Okay.
No, I mean,
Question for Troy. Troy, do you oppose Andrew's worldview? Like, if Andrew's worldview, the way he sees things, is, theoretically could work, and he could lay out that theoretical argument. Do you oppose that if that was a reality?
If it was a reality and it could work, I wouldn't necessarily oppose it.
Then there's our olive branch right there.
But here's the problem, and I don't. And all right, I can guess your answer already. Does long-term monogamy actually work? Okay.
Yes.
And that's another big issue here, because I'm not certain that it does, because you will see couples who've been married for a very long time. I mean, I've got friends, they talk about their parents, they've been married 30, 40 years. Are they happy? They're sort of content, they're together. Does it really work in the long term? Is that really how human beings are programmed?
Not only does it work, but it created the finest civilizations in the West possible. In fact, the UN Charter itself has had to acknowledge this, which is why it has a universal ban on polygamous marriages, because it even the UN Charter itself understands that one man, one woman makes for the finest bedrock of solid civilization. Literally, not kidding. The United Nations itself has declared this as being a social contagion, which needs to be eradicated.
Well,
why shouldn't they say that? Ultimately, as Myron Gaines himself has said, the nuclear family is the bedrock of civilization. Now, you can kind of make little tailorings and say, no, it's cross-generations that do this. That's fine. You can still have nuclear families and cross-generational families. Nobody's opposed to both at the same time. I'm just saying that ultimately, the reason we know that this is a social contagion and a plague is because it leads to this kind of endless coomerism that we're talking about right now.
Well, I mean, somebody's just said in the chat, but most rich men have had grey divorce. Does marriage really, really work? And I suppose that's what I'm.
Actually, he's wrong. So if we look at these divorce statistics and we look at the 64% which are filed, you'll notate that the more educated women who are with the more educated men, which definitely gives a leap in income, generally divorce less. They divorce less. So the thing is like it seems like monogamy works best for them. Now, the reason that we see all these cases come out of, oh my God, look at this celebrity like Johnny Depp and these, Steven Crowder and these other ones is because of the notoriety, because everybody knows who they are. So we can all take a look, this and that. But what about all of the tens of thousands of celebrities who have monogamous relationships, which have worked fine, that are never pointed to?
I just think that there's a dual desire in people for variety versus stability, and that's been one of the big things that the circle that I've always tried to square in my own life and in stuff that I've content I've created and stuff, because I think that both men and women, yes, we want that person, we are programmed to want a pair bond, yes, but also we like a bit of strange on the side, and that's why you had people a few years ago like Andrew and Tristan sort of. I suppose that ultimately going towards Islam in Andrew's case, but sort of saying, yeah, you've got the main girl, but then you've got these other women over here as well, because the argument being, well, the male imperative is not monogamy, and and it might not be for women either. You know,
But
and
that
again,
seems to be. Then why is it that those are the exceptions and not the rule? Why is it that Coomerism and polyamory and all of these different lifestyles seem to be exceptions and not the rule for what people move towards? People are moving towards marriage. They still want marriage. Young men report this overwhelmingly. They still want single girlfriends, and girlfriends seem to want single boyfriends. They don't want them to step out and have sex with other people. So why you say notoriety is the spice of life in a general theme, you will have to admit that most people don't seem to agree with you.
Well, I think no, you're. But I said that earlier, but I made the argument earlier that it doesn't really matter what I say because most people are going to want monogamy anyway, and so I agree with you with that because I think the reality is, like I say, most guys who come and talk to me or people I work with, they're not saying, "Hey, how do I become Jay Waller and smash like 700 women in Miami?" What they're actually saying is, "I just want to find a nice girl and settle down." So I do agree with that, but are they being sold a dream that in reality doesn't really? I mean, maybe we're talking in circles now.
That in reality seems to work best for the most amount of people.
But does it? Does it? I mean, you know.
Not only does the data show this, but all you can really do is point to the exceptions instead of the thousands upon thousands.
So 40 years. So look, if. All right, I'll put it like this: if it works, I would be on board with it because there's nothing we all want. I think in the end that pair bonding fantasy. I say fantasy. You know, you wake up, you guys are 70, you're grey, you're laying in bed together, you're like, oh, this is so beautiful. It sounds fucking great, okay? It's just that I've seen so many examples where it doesn't seem to have worked out like.
Yeah, but those examples are the exception again. While you can look at the prevalence of divorce inside of society, which is true, you still also have to admit that for most of it, most people did stay married, and that most people did stay inside of these monogamous relationships, and that stepping out, even now, by the statistics of how many men cheat, those are still exceptions. They're exceptions to the rule. Most men don't cheat. Most men don't step out. They don't do it. So how do you reconcile that, knowing that it seems like this kind of imperative intuition that men are wired to cheat. Most of them don't, though, and so
how many men have the option to cheat?
I think that the option, if you're going to say in the same breath that men will have sex with anything that they can get their hands on, then I would assume that every man has the option to cheat.
Well, you say that, but I mean, there are dudes who just, they're trying to think they can't get a date. I mean, they're I've got dudes in my
because they have preferences, right? And if you don't meet the preferences, they don't date. And one of the things that you would tell men is not to shoot outside of their preference, or not to shoot outside of what they're capable of getting, right? But if you were to say, let me ask you this. Let's assume for a second that every man on planet Earth was a 5 and every woman on planet Earth was a 1. Every man could cheat, couldn't they?
Well, I suppose so. Yeah.
So then the question is what would you cheat with? That is what it is. If a man's truly only as loyal as his options, then there's a lot of fucking 1s and 2s out there and they still aren't fucking them. Because they still have preferences.
Well, if that's the toss up though, they might just think, well, fuck it, it's not worth it. I'm just going to sit and have a cup of tea.
Right,
instead.
But this is the logical entailment of saying men are only as loyal as their options. It actually can't be true because they have tons and tons of options. Those options just don't fit with their preferences. So that actual topic for debate of saying men are only as loyal as their options actually can't be true because men have tons of options. They choose not to take them. And if it is that they only want an option to have sex with women hotter than their wives, then they themselves would be hypergamous.
Well, I don't know if that's true or not.
I guess that's how are you defining hypergamy then? Are we that would have to be?
Well, I think men.
I
think men theoretically. I remember actually the first interaction I ever had with Rollo Tomasi. I wrote a comment on his blog, and he came back and shouted at me because I basically said, well, you're talking about female hypergamy, but surely men are hypergamous as well because men, given the choice, would go for the best quality woman that they could get. And he came back and he said, no, you don't understand. That's trophy wives. What are you talking about? Blah, blah, blah. Or something like that. But no, I think in an ideal world, I think men would also be we could call it hypergamous. I think if a man had two options and one of them was significantly more attractive or brought something else to the
They're
table,
going to take the one that's significantly more attractive, right?
We're going to go for that, yeah. It's just,
Are they going to step out with something significantly less attractive? Probably not, right? Probably not. And if the answer is probably not, and I think you concede that that has to be true, at least in most cases, then that means that men do have options and they just don't use them.
I don't know if that's true or not, and I'm not gonna be one of those like all right, let's see the source, but I'm just not sure if that's true.
Well, I mean, let's just step through it logically. Logical step one: if a man has the option of all things equal, same personality in a woman, but one's way hotter than the other one, which one will they take? The hotter one, yeah.
Well. Yeah, but what if you're some fat bloke in your late 50s? You're living.
You'll still take the hotter woman, right?
Yeah, but has he really got options? This
is the question, right? If you're going to take the hotter woman, then that means that the other woman that you would not take if the two options are presented, it means you would take that woman. So let's say that let's say that you bag a 6, right? You still have tons of 2s you can go have sex with. You just don't.
Okay, but I mean, even if that's true, like I'm still not certain that every man has options. I think there are some men that are just
sure. I'm not convinced every woman has options either. But the thing is, it's like I'm not going to be able to make these sorts of prescriptions on society based on outliers. I think that most men can go out and have sex with ugly women. I think that they can. I think that they just don't fucking want to. And you know what? Troy, I don't blame him. I don't blame him. Are you going to go have sex with a 500-pound chick?
Well, no, but that's not a great argument.
Can you?
Well, no, I need some medical assistance.
No, I know, but could you go to a 500-pound chick and say, let's go have sex, and she'd probably say yes?
Well, I guess so. Yeah.
Well, then you have fucking options, bro.
That's not a great. That's also not a great argument for monogamy. Is the argument for monogamy works because men can fuck ugly chicks if they wanted to, but they choose not to.
Well, that wasn't an argument specifically for monogamy. That argument was just to take this talking point, which exists, that men are only as loyal as their option, and shit on it. Because I believe that they have far more options than what you guys are presenting that they have. I think they have far more options which are under them. They just choose not to take them, which means that men have far more virtue than is what's being pushed inside of these communities. I think they're far more virtuous than what is being stated.
But the hypothetical is not is if you're talking about virtue, the hypothetical that's usually presented is not that you're talking about. The hypothetical is, okay, this is the kind of thing Myron would say. Okay, he's in a hotel room. There's 3 Victoria's Secret models in there. He can get to have sex with all 3 of them or one of them or whatever. Nobody's ever going to find out. Is he going to do it or not? And the reality is, most men, if they weren't going to get found out, they probably would do it. That's the argument. You're making a somewhat different.
And what
argument.
would consolidate that argument as a fact?
Is what?
What would consolidate that argument is factual? That he would indeed do it, just that you think he would?
Well, it seems to be the case. No. I mean, we there is evidence that suggests that men are driven to spread their seed. I mean, there's plenty of data on this. There's plenty of studies.
And yet, men are not initiating divorces at nearly the rate that women are. And yet, men claim that they want to be in these monogamous long-term relationships. And yet, you want to say to me that they're hardwired instead to spread their seed. It seems that their preferences don't match their biology, which is super strange to me, Troy.
Well, I mean, I'm the only one who's living an honest life then. All of these other guys are fucking faking. All of these other guys are fucking losers.
All right. Basically, well, listen. We had you for 2 hours, but I would like, if you guys don't mind, here on the Crucible, we've always taken some callers. I don't think we're going to get to the super chats because, we have to wind this into the debate down. Do you mind if I bring in a couple callers to talk with you, Troy? Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then Glenn, I wouldn't mind doing quick closing statements before we can move on to some callers real quick. And then, I went first. So, generally speaking, the guy goes first, goes last. Troy, if you want to give your closing statements, go ahead, man.
Well, look, I mean, I think that I take your point about not shitting on the people who are making an honest effort to try to move society in a direction that they believe would be better for society. I also take on board the fact that, look, I mean, is society ideal right now? No, there are many flaws in society, and many of those are, as you say, attributable to the things that we've talked about, including feminism. However, I also believe that, you know, men are hardwired to want to have sex with multiple women, certainly at certain points in their life, certainly when they're younger. Society currently facilitates that quite conveniently. And if you want to be a bachelor and you want to enjoy the fruits of that, this is one of the greatest times in the history of the entire planet to be alive, right? Now, you know, people will say, well, that's a very degenerate view to take, and what if everybody did that, and blah, blah, blah. But as we've already said, as even you've acknowledged, most guys actually don't want to do it, and they're not going to do it. So I think for the small subsector of people who do want to live that lifestyle, you know, there's advice out there, there's guidance out there. There are ways that you can do it that I believe are, you know, ethical, that you can treat people with respect. It doesn't have to be this terrible thing where you're, you know, it's this really negative thing. And look, at some point, everybody might decide, you know, people might want to change their view. They might want to settle down. They might want to change their ways. And I think that's also okay. But look, I mean, my fundamental issue with all of the trad stuff is not so much the trad stuff in itself. It is how realistic it is that it's ever going to, you know, reach a critical mass sufficient to really change things in society. And B, still have this fundamental issue with the idea of long-term monogamy and how efficacious it actually is. And that's a problem I don't think any of us are really going to solve. I mean, you would say, well, the Christian covenant within the church is going to help with that, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's a fundamental human problem, which is that people want stability, but they also like a bit of variety. And that's a circle I think we all find very difficult to square. So no easy answers here, I'm afraid. But that's sort of my final takes from the conversation at this point.
Well, let me give my closing and state first, thank you so much for doing the debate. I really appreciate it. I hope there's no bad blood whatsoever. I come into
absolutely.
a debate with a different ideology, and my goal is to represent it the best that I possibly can. I hold absolutely no ill will towards you at all. Secondly, let me put forward an olive branch. We need all of you guys, all of you, on our side. And we need you to stop counter-signaling us as we try to push a much better agenda, a finer agenda. And what I hear is impossibility, this isn't true, this and that. But as we went through this debate, it was rife, filled to the brim with contradictions, things that make no sense, data which wasn't true. On top of that, just assertions that ultimately fell short. What I'd like to see is I'd like to see red pillars and the red pill community and people who advocate those principles, which are not many of those descriptors against Christian ethics at all. In fact, we would agree with you on many of those descriptors. Come over to our side and help us try to affect this kind of real change in society that we want. The only drawback for you is that you might have to stop cooming a little bit. Really, I mean, that's it, right? The only real drawbacks to you guys, you might have to stop cooming a little bit. But the olive branch is there. And just remember this. Not all the people on the Christian right are terrible at representing their viewpoint, and not just because the Daily Wire guys won't show up to slug it out. I'll slug it out with any of you guys anytime. But that doesn't mean I have any type of animosity towards you. Instead, I'd like to see a good support mechanism coming our direction as well. When guys like Chase, who's the man in the chair, on a place like Whatever Podcast, he is trying to at least give cultural pushback. Getting counter-signaled at every end is fucking ridiculous. And from the other end, if there was agreement that we had with you guys, I think we would definitely push those descriptors forward. So I hope by the end of this, people can see that there is a distinction in ideology. I am looking forward to having more of these debates with gentlemen like this. And Troy Francis, thank you so much for doing the debate. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Mr. E, you have the link, by the way, in my chat. If you want to bring some callers in, you're welcome to do so. So
yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciated you coming on.
Expecting a whole lot more blood back and forth, you guys. You guys were just being way too nice.
Well,
were we being nice?
I mean, Troy, you're the most nicest guy in the world, I swear.
Well, I'm an English gentleman, but he just said all my arguments were rubbish and fallacious. So he was being kind of polite about it as well. So
I know.
No,
Andrew,
they were all rubbish and fallacious. I won't be kind about it.
No, but your delivery was kind.
Well, blood sport doesn't mean spurging. It doesn't mean over the top insanity. Blood sport just means you have a really contentious debate with two people who seriously disagree. So that's my whole point.
The biggest question is why now and why not before was, the Christ pill movement ever a thing?
Because now there's two parallels which exist. Both of them are now, whether the kind of red pill umbrella is willing to admit this or not, they are quickly becoming what is considered a geopolitical movement. It's a global movement. And so it's being targeted within the realm of politics, whether they like it or not. They're going to be targeted in the realm of politics. We've seen this over and over. Christians have begun to start moving towards political action again very effectively. And so when these two ideologies find each other, there's going to be contention. Now, we can either do one of two things. We can have a bloodbath to the delight of the progressive scum, or we can try to find commonality and common ground, not counter-signal each other on the things that we do agree on in order to push a cultural narrative that we can agree on. That's why it's going on.
I would say that, because I'm in both spaces. I agree with the red pill description, and I definitely believe in biblical patriarchy, as the practice, to live by.
Do you believe ultimately? Because we obviously had a conversation with Pearl. I mean, do you believe are you ultimately like a Christ pill guy? Do you believe that could be?
I would say, like, in a perfect world, that's the way that, from a biblical worldview, that's the way that we ought to live by in a perfect world. Right. Like, that was God's original design, and you would think that you would want to live as close to the original design as humanly possible, right? To get the best outcome of, things, right? But with the whole Christ pill push that I have a problem with is that you guys punted during the 80s with egalitarianism. I think you have a lot to prove to these men in the red pill space who left churches and found themselves in this,
Protestant churches.
Men.
We have 2,000 years of history winning and surviving in the worst places possible, including under Soviet Russia, including under communism, including under all sorts of different genocides which have happened all throughout history to the Christian church. We're going to survive the red pill too. It would be far more beneficial for red pillars to reach an olive branch out and for us to try to work together towards some of these core societal issues than it would be for the opposition, because Christian philosophy is old, we're super fucking smart, we're united, and we're really good at this shit. Not always our representatives are, but many of us are, and so my suggestion is that we try to find that.
We wouldn't be united as a very loosely used term.
Well, I'm talking about ideological descriptors which we can unite behind. Things like feminism is bad, feminism's evil, Marxism and totalitarianism is awful under a Marxist system. There's many different things which the church can unite with on these red pill descriptors, but where the argument seems to come in is gotta coom, right? Gotta coom. And it's like, well, that's where we're going to find these kinds of blows, but I guarantee you that the gates of hell will never prevail against the church, and we will continue to make these great cases and arguments, and ultimately will prevail because an ideology like this is non-self-sustaining. It is a genetic dead end. For instance, Mr. Francis, this is none of my concern. You can tell me to shut the fuck up if it's too personal, but do you have any children?
No.
Genetic dead end. Like, we're destined to win, right? We're destined to win.
Well, I mean, in the end, nobody's destined to win because the earth is going to be consumed by fire and humanity will be completely forgotten. And so all of this will be irrelevant anyway. So yes, I mean, if you've got kids, your genes will survive for a few generations, and then it's kind of it's an argument
Sure,
people like
but
to
let's
make.
say it only lasts 1,000 years. I still want to win for 500 of it. Right?
But
And if you're a genetic dead end, you ain't going to win in the next 500 years. That's a big problem, right?
Well, not really, because I'm going to be dead. I mean, I don't see how it's a massive problem for me.
Because
but
your genes live on. Your genes get to live on even after your death, even from your worldview.
It's probably better my genes are eradicated.
Unfortunately, from my perspective, that's basically true.
Can I ask a question?
Right? I mean, it's basically true.
Andrew, how would you respond to the question of, well, let's say the Christ pill movement, that's the real way to go. Well, what about the argument that nobody followed the Christ pill when Christ was here?
Yeah, there's another point actually that's just occurred to me, which is when you look at countries that are more, traditionally Christian, including Russia and some of Eastern Europe, actually the divorce rates over there are pretty high. I mean, if you look, I was surprised, but if you look at the divorce rates in some of these countries, you'd think it would be a lot lower. They're actually kind of higher. I mean, there's one Eastern European country, the divorce rate was something like 70 fucking.
It is true. In some of the Eastern European nations where they have become more westernized, they have been trying their hardest to actually move against westernization in order to keep these problems under control. Same thing with the birth rate, which is why you see in many of these Eastern Bloc nations or old Eastern Bloc nations where the birth rate has plummeted. They have begun to implement social programs which they have seen success for recovery. The West has not seen any success for recovery. So the thing is that the move back towards traditionalism is actually a matter of survival. It's not really an option of whether we should or shouldn't do it. It's a matter of actual survival for humanity. We must do something because your bloodlines are going to die out. Ultimately, we're going to win just by the fact that we're the only ones breeding.
Well, apart from let's say people of different religions to you who are also breeding quite a lot.
Yeah, but religion, that's the key, right? People who are in religion, they're breeding. So ultimately, yes, are we going to have more religious conflict down the road? Yes. But are we going to have to contend with secularists who don't breed? I'm not sure. I'm not sure in another couple of hundred years if progressivism under a secular purview is even going to be possible anymore, because there is no mandate to reproduce. There's only the mandate of using contraception and doing whatever you want, having a good time and cooming, right?
Well, I mean, but there is a mandate to reproduce, which is the biological urge to reproduce.
That's true.
Most women have.
You have a biological urge to have sex, and the entailment of sex used to be reproduction. And then once you reproduced, you had a biological urge to take care of the offspring. But with the advent of contraception, you can have that same urge to reproduce satiated without the consequence of reproduction. And absent a non-material worldview, which is what religion brings, what incentive do people have not to do that?
We've got a few. It looks like there's a few callers on here. Should we bring somebody on? Mm-hmm. There's a few people here.
Yeah, I would make sure that you vet. I think that they were vetted through my mod, just so you know, unless you shared the link.
Well, no, I didn't share the link. We've got Mystery Meat. Yeah. Is that your mod?
Mr. E is. There should be Mando, Unconventional Man, and Baz FZ. So any of those guys are good and vetted.
All right. Yeah, okay, so we'll bring Unconventional Man. Okay, so here we go. Unconventional Man, welcome to the show.
Can you hear us, man? You're going to have to unmute your
mic.
Can
you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, hey, how you doing?
Good.
So
how are you?
I actually have a question for Troy. So on Twitter, you said that one should be able to sleep with multiple women and use that as a screening tool to find a, I guess, ideal mate, right? So my question about that strategy is, how is that strategy superior to, I don't know, looking into her past, getting to know her family, her friends, asking her opinion about marriage and feminism, or even her physical appearance, how she presents herself in public or to other people? Because by sleeping with multiple women, you're putting yourself at risk of STDs, pregnancy. Maybe she's a crazy fucking girl, or could be a stalker. So how is that strategy of sleeping with multiple women superior?
Well, so it sounds like I nicked basically Myron's talking point there in whatever tweet that was, because I mean that's a Myron thing, isn't it, where he says, you know, you should sleep with, I think it was 50 women he said, before settling down. I think the numbers are, you know, debated, but he said 50 women. I think for me the answer to the question is, when I first, you know, the first woman I slept, I didn't have a fucking clue what I was doing. Right, I was very, very naive. I started fairly late. I think the first woman I slept with, I was about 20 or something, or 19 or 20, right? Slept with this woman. I thought she was fucking amazing. We got together. We ended up in a relationship. There were more red flags than even Rich Cooper could think of. I mean, we're talking like a whole fucking communist parade of red flags. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I didn't, you know, she would have been an incredibly bad choice. You know, we slept together. Then shortly afterwards she dumped me, and then I slept with a bunch of more women. And what it enabled me to do was firstly to understand female nature more, because I think that physical intimacy with somebody, it does help you to understand them on a deeper level. And secondly, I mean, look, I mean, you guys may disagree. I do think that some sort of physical chemistry is important in a long-term relationship. I mean, I did a show about this recently where I was reviewing some TikToks of Christian women who were, you know, saying, "Oh, don't have sex before marriage."
You were counter signaling again, right?
Well,
counter signaling.
Well, I mean, is it a good strategy or not? I mean, I saw one woman. I mean, look, maybe I was projecting. I saw one woman who was describing how she hadn't slept with her husband. Then the wedding day they slept together. She didn't seem hugely happy about it. She was saying, "Oh, there's some things we need to iron out and work through," and blah blah blah. And it's kind of like, I don't know, from a secular point of view, I think that people will sleep together before they commit, because it's a big part of the relationship and you want to see if that part's kind of working.
And yet, cohabitation, it drastically increases your chances of getting a divorce if you cohabitate before marriage. This is actually, there's a study on this, and this particular study, again, has a meta-analysis behind it. And it took, going back to the 80s again, into consideration cohabitation, pre-marriage, which does have a higher divorce rate, almost 15% higher cohabitating before marriage. So all this, we got to test drive it before you buy it. It seems like that's counterintuitive. In fact, the study itself is called the Christian paradox, because secularists don't understand how that's possible.
So why do you think why do you think that is? What's the reason for the, because I've heard the thing about cohabitation. Why do you think that would affect it?
Because I think that on your side of this, that the ontological distinctions that you make with women are pretty spot on. They're pretty close to being true most of the time. But I think that the way that you read men is not correct. And I think that men have a completely different nature than what is being pushed by, guys on your side of this. It seems to me that if men are able to get a hold of a woman who they really love and care about, and they wait till marriage, they're happy for the rest of their life. In most cases, this seems to be the case. And cohabitation, or having sex beforehand or intermingling beforehand, seems to complexify this situation.
Yeah, I just don't understand really why. Because I mean, okay, I get that I'm coming at this. If I'm coming at this from a secular perspective,
because men are more virtuous. That's why.
I don't disagree, and I think that men will stay in a relationship for longer than women.
So the ontology of men as virtuous, as more virtuous, at least than the opposite sex, it seems that absent the cohabitation, when they really worked really hard to gain that hand, and they did gain the hand, and off they walk, they got their virgin, they got the life that they wanted, they seem to be pretty content with it.
Yeah,
shockingly, and the data backs it up.
I get that, but I just don't see why what the huge distinction is between you guys have had a bit of sexy time first, and then you sign on the dotted line a few months later. I don't see why that would make a huge difference, but I mean, maybe
because I think it makes people inquisitive. I think it makes men inquisitive.
Oh, because then they think, oh, actually, hang on a minute, is there something else out there?
Yeah, is there something else out there? Is there something better? Is there something, something new, something more fun? I think it does the same for women.
Well,
I think it does the same for women. I think that what happens is what's called an apex desire. At least this is what the data seems to claim. which is that if you're waiting for the right person for X amount of time, let's say you're in a courtship for 3 years with no sex whatsoever, and you finally tie the knot, right? There is this kind of apex of desire which happens that actually brings you closer, and that seems to be what they're reporting as far as the reason why it is that outside of cohabitation, it ended up being better for their marriage later on.
Yeah, I mean, what's your opinion out of interest? You know how the red pill will always say, well, women get ruined because, if they have a bunch of sexual partners, it's harder for them to pair bond. What do you think? Do you think the same thing can apply to men?
It does.
I'm inclined to agree. I think it can. I think it's harder if you're a guy.
It also builds massive trust issues, and some of them in modernity seem to be well warranted. You know what I mean? But here's the thing, Troy. Let's be honest. The way that you are right now, the distrust that you have of women compared to Troy when you were 22 years old, it's got to be night and fucking day.
Well, yes, but I don't believe that every woman is a bad woman. I believe
not saying that.
Women.
I would never say that. Of course, that's ridiculous. Take it to the level of every woman is bad. No. Yeah. Even the worst misogynist, I don't think really believe that. But I'm just saying that ultimately,
it makes it harder.
It does make it harder, right? So wouldn't that affect pair bonding?
I suppose so. I mean, but then the problem is, I have friends who will say, I don't personally do this because I'm not really into this vibe, but I have friends who maybe they've slept with married women and things like this, and they will say that some of the things I've seen now, I just can't trust women. I personally, I draw the line at, like, I don't like to fuck around with that kind of thing, but, I can see from their point of view, but that's not, what you seem to be saying is it's better if they just live in blissful naivety. What they would say is, well, no, I've now seen the reality.
Is that but is it naivety or is it a lack of corruption?
Well, I mean, if women are going to do that shit anyway, and they've just observed it,
but they haven't always done that. And so, if they are doing this, and it's through an observation of social contagion, and it seems like trying to remove the social contagion is the move here.
Yeah, but I mean, infidelity's always existed, though. I mean, you could say maybe a bit less, but
But the reason that virgins were always so highly valued is because in case of infidelity, that was why, right? Yeah. They wanted to make sure that their progeny was theirs, and that's why it was so highly valued. They knew that it was, and the chances were much higher that it would be if they married a virgin. So why wouldn't you be wired to want a virgin, right?
Yeah, okay, but just very quickly, because we got another guy to come on, but I mean, just very quickly, what's your opinion on the idea that, okay, you could wife up a woman who's a virgin or she's had, let's say, very, very minimal sexual experience, she's young, whatever, but then she starts to get FOMO, like a few years in, she's like, oh, fuck, actually, all my friends are having this great time, she sees the picture.
This is a very real phenomenon, and I'm not going to dispute this. But my position is that this exists as a social contagion, and that absent seeing the friends go out and go to the nightclubs and be skanks and hoes and be all over OnlyFans making thousands of dollars, without the comparison contrast, without the social contagion existing, much like LGBTQ, for instance, you see the apparatus for it significantly lowering, and why wouldn't it? You know what I mean? There's nothing to compare it to. So I believe it's a social contagion and not just part of nature. And that's a big delineation that I have with the opposite side of this argument.
Well, let's. We got the other guy here. So this is.
Let me make sure I give you the right names. We have Mando.
BASS.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yo, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're on.
Nice, awesome. So I want to preface the question I'm going to pose by first completely agreeing with Andrew here. I know it might seem a little obvious, but this is something I've thought about making a video about on my channel as well. And that is the fact, if you think hard about man's complaint about dating, most men don't ever complain about how they can't have multiple women. They complain about how they can't have one woman.
Yes.
Yeah. And we have many words to insult men that want one woman.
By the way, Baz, I really like your videos. Can you tell us your channel real quick again?
Oh, it is Baz Easy. I'm using my username.
Okay. Here. Okay. Just I wanted to make sure you didn't get out of here without shouting your channel out, right?
We have men stuck in the friend zone. Again, I ask, if man is so promiscuous, how does a man get stuck in the friend zone with one woman he's not having sex with? But more than that, this is the more important question. I think this just far better, and that's more to highlight how men want one woman. And that is when we discuss reproduction, because you made a point about this earlier, we don't actually talk about the product completely. We talk about man's want to reproduce, but let's talk about the actual children that get born. Why don't we use the red pill knowledge we have to make life better for those children? If we encourage men to be promiscuous and not create families, children still get born. And if we all understand that children need fathers, why aren't we trying to encourage more virtuous men to raise those children? Why do we keep trying to get them to be more promiscuous
Well, I think,
when
Bass,
children
we have to
need
be
them?
we have to be careful about the only idea of what about the men do. There is a massive responsibility in society that needs to ride and rest on the shoulders of women who are
Absolutely.
going to become mothers.
Absolutely.
So while I
And-
concede to you that I think that men should be virtuous, I already believe that they are more virtuous. And I think that instead what we're dealing with is an invasive social contagion, which can be combated by the power and might of the Christian church.
Absolutely. No, I agree.
I got
absolutely.
a question for you guys on this. Wouldn't you say like there's passages in the Bible that kind of support the fact that marriage is going to be few?
What do you mean?
Well, you know, Proverbs 31, how rare a virtuous wife is, right? She's as rare as rubies. And then you got in Ecclesiastes 7, Solomon talks about, you know, one out of 1,000 or 10,000 men he found righteous, but he couldn't find not one righteous woman.
Yeah, but what does equally yoked mean? So if you're talking about what is equally yoked as well, remember that virtues can sometimes come later in life, right? None of us are any strangers to sin. None of us are any strangers to giving into passions, giving in to our own cardinal needs, things like this. None of us are above any of that. We've all been there. You're talking about virtue itself that can be found also later in life. I'm just saying that you can make societal conditions such that you can maybe find it earlier. And even if it is still rare, let's at
why
least
don't we
make the
highlight that?
conditions for the diamonds to become more diamonds than less diamonds, right?
Yeah, let's actually highlight and encourage young ladies to actually be virtuous, good people and challenge them to change. That's one thing I always talk about on my channel. Let's
Well, I think
challenge
that's where the
women to
problem
actually
could
rise
really
up
be
to our
addressed.
standard. Go ahead.
I think that's where I don't think men and women are more sinful than
Yeah,
the
this
other.
guy said, I can't. He said in my chat, I only sin inside women. Oh my God, dude. I can't help it. I'm going to get all kinds of shit for that, but it was so funny.
That's a good
Nah,
one.
good one. Keep it going.
But like, it seems like, you know, we're not saying that women are sinning or are more sinful than men, but what it has seen now in culture that women are sinning at a higher rate and getting away with it. So there's this lack of
I think part of
addressing
that is,
women that probably needs to be, the guys in the red pill space are saying, hey, how about you get your women in line first before you tell us how to live a life?
I got it. No, see, this is the problem I have with a lot of guys in red pill space. I'm in the red pill space. There is a lot more of adapting to what women want than challenging them to be better. Our men's here, I think I've seen him a few
Crowns in
times. I
chat.
can
That was a
guarantee
chat
you,
W.
all he has done is adapted
Chat
to what
W,
women
Andrew
sexually
L
select.
on
He has
that
not
one.
challenged them to be better people. I guarantee
It was totally
you
inappropriate
that has
for
been
me
his
to
entire
mention that
life
comment at
experience
all,
growing up and
but
trying
it
to
was
court
just
women.
it was so
And that's the
fucking funny.
problem.
I couldn't
You
help
can't
myself.
give
That's
sinful
an
women
Andrew
what they
L. I'll
want. They're
take
not
the
going to
one
get
L
better. They're going to
tonight
make
from
things
chat.
worse. So what I'm trying to say to Terry here, to Roy, I believe that's how you pronounce it, right? The reason why I wanted to direct the question towards you is because if we're encouraging men to adapt to women's promiscuous ways, where does this leave our children? Where does this leave the people that come after us? It doesn't seem like that's going to make the world any better. So why do we keep giving women what they want when it's terrible?
Why do we start to begin with?
Where do we? Oh, that's a good question. We start to begin with because we want women's favor, right?
But over to Troy, I mean, that's a good question
yeah.
for you, right? Is like,
Well,
yeah, I want
why move towards this egalitarianism when it seems like it's so foolhardy ultimately?
well, because men want to have sex with women. I mean, it comes.
Women want to have sex with men. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Now somebody's
No,
going
I mean, it
to
comes
and
down
see
to
all the L's in
again.
chat
I mean,
and think it's because
a
I
very
lost the debate,
bestial,
which
it's
is
a very
hilarious.
simplistic thing to say, but the reality is, there are plenty of guys out there who they want to go out and they want to get laid, and as much as you guys don't like it, the reality is the current setup kind of facilitates that for men who are in a certain bracket. Now, you could argue, okay, well, you're just pandering to women and blah blah blah, but if the end result is you have sexual experiences that you enjoy with a variety of women, then that's a box ticked as far as
But Troy, isn't that more the apex of the men who can be promiscuous, not the vast majority of men who
no,
can?
no, you're right. It is, and I think you said at the beginning, there are guys who can't even get a date. And
But that's overwhelmingly how young men
absolutely,
feel.
it's a huge problem, and that actually, I mean, that's one thing we kind of haven't touched on in this whole conversation. And you've got what you might call the incel movement or the black pill guys or whatever, and that may I don't see that situation improving, and that may socially become an even bigger problem as we move forward. I mean, what we're trying to, I suppose, do in a small way as coaches is try to help people to level up so that
but in a promiscuous way, not like in a family creation way.
Well,
I mean, what about our children? Because we're still not talking about them.
Well, some people are.
Go ahead.
Some people are. There are people. I mean, Rollo Tomasi's been married for 25 years. He's got.
But even Rollo Tomasi wrote a tweet that said, if you want to be high value, one of the tenets is to not have children. That's one of the tenets he wrote.
Yeah,
Well, hang on. This guy's not here to defend himself, Baz. Let's keep it off that.
My bad.
Yeah, I don't know how.
True. Yeah,
I'll
have my day with Rollo one of these days.
But there are plenty of dudes out there who actually, including people like the Tates, including who do want children, who do have children, who talk about having children. I mean, there are plenty of red pill people, and they would then raise their children in a way that would be, more traditional. I suspect would be more in line, perhaps, with some of the the views that you hold. So I think there are people out there who are doing it.
Wouldn't that be a bit hypocritical?
Even for myself, I mean, look, if you're fundamentally talking about female nature, dating skills, okay, how can I get better at dating? You can use that in whatever way you want. You don't have to use that to go and smash a load of girls in Vegas. You can use that to go and find a nice girl and settle down and
saying that's a loss.
Have a nice relationship.
Fuck
I mean,
you.
and
That
that's
was a
actually what a lot of people want to do.
Wasn't even close. Even if you
know what's
disagree
funny,
with
Troy?
me, it wasn't
Remember,
close.
was a couple months ago, you and I were talking about this.
Yeah.
Me or Troy were talking about trying to talk. How would we talk to young Christian guys at youth group about game that's in the confines of a biblical worldview? Like how to teach them to have confidence, how to teach them to be, what do you guys call it? Riz.
I mean,
but
I think I don't think
that conversation's being had at the youth group with young men,
Well, I think that's more a conversation to have with your father and your friends and actually experiencing talking to women. Like it's a trial and error thing. There's no secret sauce to it. You do it, you keep doing it. Sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not. But the intention behind that can't be, well, I just want to have sex with them. And that's what I'm saying. Like as creators, as content creators, we have the ability to at some level influence people.
And
we should direct them towards something far more positive than I just want to have sex with women. I think we can do more than that. And I think if you're a dating coach, it shouldn't be, I'm just going to teach you how to riz a woman and have sex with her. What's the next step beyond that? Let's actually encourage these men to be better people than just those who just want to just have sex. And from that extent, those men can actually, reach the women that they're talking to.
Look, I mean, I get it. I mean, I personally, I don't have any issue with whatever people want to do. If people want to get married, they want to find that special woman, they want to settle down. I'm not saying people shouldn't do that. I think that if you find a great woman and that's what you want to do, that's great. Good for you. But I also think that, I also think a lot of people do that, not necessarily for religious reasons, because that's what society tells them that they should do. And I think that it's also worth pointing out that you don't have to do that, because actually, I also know people. I also know people who've been through divorces. I know dudes in their 60s who've been through terrible divorces, and now they're sort of living the dream, really. Maybe they've got kids, they're single, they're traveling around, they're working on their businesses, they're having a good time.
Love you, Logan. Thank you so much for all the great and
modern
wonderful
life,
gifted
technology,
memberships.
and the way things
but you owe me
facilitates
$10,
different lifestyles. They may not be lifestyles that you guys approve of, but they are there and they are possible. And I think it's, I don't think it's a bad thing to inform people of the choices that they have.
I think I fundamentally disagree. I think there are definitely different choices that are objectively better than one or the other, especially when you have the ability to actually improve the lives of others. Like you say,
hang on, caller. We do have some other callers in row.
That's
I only
true.
have so much time for for Troy.
That's
He's
fair.
already given tons of his time, which I appreciate.
Mhm.
Can we move on to the next caller here?
Absolutely.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. I appreciate it, Baz. Have
Yeah,
a great
thank you
day.
very
Oh yeah,
much.
thank you for letting me in. I appreciate it. You're absolutely right. I'm gonna let you guys.
And then we have
Good stuff.
Mando or Sirius Red. Both of them have been vetted.
Serious Red, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Andrew, wouldn't you think that there is a lot of steps to have to take first and like be worked on in the ground level of the, we'll say church as in a big C, like Christian communities in general together before they could even think that they can make any significant impact?
Let's start with step one, which is a discussion.
Well, there is another argument, which is how do you make the church more attractive? And this is something Pearl was talking about the other day.
That's a Protestant thing, right? People are leaving Protestantism in droves because it's not attractive, because they've gotten rid of their grounding founding principles. That's why people are moving towards the traditional church as fast as possible. And I wish them all speed. May Protestantism finally go by the wayside as it was always meant to, because it is those are the trends, man. Those are the trends.
Yeah, I'm afraid I was brought up a Protestant, man. So I was.
Many people are, but we love you too, and we need you over here in the Orthodox Church.
Yes, Andrew's been recruiting me now for the last.
You're coming, Glenn. You're coming, whether you like it or not.
What about Catholicism?
I'd rather see a Catholic than a Protestant.
Okay. Yeah.
Just
I'd
don't
rather
go to
see a Catholic than a Protestant, but I mean, here's the thing. I'm conflicted on this because there's a lot of based-ass Protestants. Like, there's a lot of Protestants who I'm like, you guys are fucking awesome, right? You guys are based as shit. You have all the right viewpoints, you know what I mean? And I hate to see them wasted on Catholicism. I'd much rather see them come over to Orthodoxy where we need you the most, you know what I mean? But that's just me. That's just Andrew preferences, right?
Yeah. So we got Sirius Red, or are you there?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, so I'm kind of in the middle of you guys on this. I'm like a red pillar who has some Christian sympathies. The reason I feel that way is because I was really struggling in life, and I kind of was exposed to red pill content, let's say, and like it improved my life like dramatically, helped kind of save my life, you know.
Good.
And
so how can we save it the rest of the way?
Sure, no, I understand. Say it right, like Christian. Sure. So in my opinion, the red pill matters. The reason this matters is because it helps struggling men, like my former self. These types of men make up a very, very, very large part of the population. And I believe that the red pill prescriptions mainly aim to raise up men to a higher level. In my worldview, masculine excellence is the most important.
Sirius Red, I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
What prescriptions?
Yeah, I can explain that. I wrote some stuff down, so I was just kind of reading it. But
yeah.
So in my worldview, masculine excellence is the most important goal to achieve because it's a trickle-down effect. When these men that are struggling, when they improve themselves, they gain confidence, self-esteem, happiness, things like this. All these things benefit women by result. So you start with the men, and then you work your way down. And it's not even necessarily you're doing it for women as a man. It's more like you better yourself, and then everything else gets better as a result of this, right?
But why would this sort of self-improvement, and I'm guessing that the types of self-improvement that you're talking about are things like being in better shape, materialism, more money, things like this, right? And if you have these types of material condition improvements, this leads to not only you being better, but there's a trickle-down effect to those around you. Is that correct?
Not exactly. I wouldn't say materialism.
Outside of materialism can you give me as far as a betterment, which is a prescription of the red pill?
When you say materialism, are the only two things that exist in the world materialism and religiosity?
No. There's you can make a claim towards the metaphysical as well. But
what's an example
in this particular case, like the laws of logic would be metaphysical. These
So
are things
striving
that you
for-
might agree
striving for-
these are things that you might agree that exist, even though you may not agree that God exists, but you would say that these are immaterial concepts which exist. So when I'm talking about materialism, I'm talking about, in this case, just stuff and physicality or naturalism. So external to naturalism, virtues and things like this, you wouldn't consider to be material prospects, right?
Well, I do believe that like achieving these types of things, like improving your financial success, your physical success, and your ability to like speak with other people. I do believe these metaphysical type things you talk about.
Those aren't
actually
metaphysical. Those are natural.
No. I'm saying the metaphysical things you are talking about, like virtue.
Okay.
Your virtue is improved by achieving those things. I do believe that to be the
How
case.
is you being in better shape and having more money make you more virtuous?
It helps your ability to provide value to the world.
Then why would that be a virtue?
Why is providing value to the world a virtue if you
Yeah.
choose to do that? Is that your question?
Yeah, well, value is a subjective claim.
Helping other people is value.
Well, what is considered helps a subjective claim too. So the
Oh, I
question,
suppose if you donate to
Yeah, so
charity,
that-
that would be an example.
well, I mean, what
You
if
have
it's
more money to do
what if
that.
it's to an abortion charity?
That wouldn't be very virtuous,
Well, right,
would
it wouldn't be very
From my
virtuous,
worldview,
would
at
it?
least.
Right, but it's charity, right? So the thing is that this.
But
is,
I didn't say as a monolith. I said in my
I
worldview.
understand. I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that if you're going to make an application for virtue, you need to have a grounding for what is virtuous. That's my claim.
What kind of definition do you like to hear?
For what your grounding is for why you should be virtuous.
You need to hear an explanation on why one should be virtuous.
No, why you think the grounding foundation should be virtue.
I think I understand where you're going with this. I think you're going to bring it back to Christianity, which I actually don't disagree with. So
Based.
I'm not going to
Well, then we've got you.
I'm not going to argue.
We've got our fucking hooks in you. You're coming over here.
I
right?
Andrew, I told you already. I have
right.
Christian leanings. I said that in my first
All
statement.
right, fair
But
enough.
that's-
I'll let you ask your question. I'm sorry, I'm done with the cross examination. Go ahead.
okay. You're a really intelligent guy, so I appreciate the questions. So basically, my only, I guess, disagreement with you, Andrew, is that kind of this pushback on the red pill as a whole. Because I think the only point, I think you just said this, I think the only thing you actually disagree with is the sexual degeneracy. I think all the other aspects of red pill, you actually find to be valuable to the world have a positive value. So I guess
So hang on.
Yeah.
So I believe in many what you would consider red pill descriptors as being true. That's true. It's when we get to the prescriptive that I have trouble. The red pill can accommodate Mr. Francis here, who's a total coomer. Then from my perspective, this is leading to non-virtue. And if it's leading to non-virtue, then it's a bad doctrine.
But so here's the problem I think I see in your evaluation.
Okay.
I think you think the red pill is something that I don't think it actually is.
Okay.
I mean, is this just the same thing as you were saying before, Andrew, that people can kind of straw man the Christ pill because you can say, oh, it's all about this thing, and actually there are differing viewpoints. I mean, my viewpoint, my perspective, my presentation within.
I'm not trying to straw man. Rather, I'm trying to engage directly in ideology of Troy Francis versus what Sirius Red considers to be red pill versus my ideology, which does make it more complex. I agree with that, but I'm trying my hardest not to make this a straw man. So I'm just trying to kind of directly engage with what he's saying. And when I'm talking about a virtuous doctrine, he agrees that virtue is super important, which is why he's half over on this side. I'm just explaining why it is that I think that men who would advocate for the doctrines you do are going to take away from that virtue. That's all.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I get that, but I'm just saying that not every person in the red pill is going to necessarily have the same ideas as
Totally
me.
agree with you. Totally agree, and I think we should not umbrella it, but we should take one person on at a time. So
yeah,
I think the red pill is extremely just all diverse. You have more fractions in the red pill than you have those in alignment.
Yeah, well, Sirius, can you? I would like to hear the rest of your question, though, if you don't mind.
Of course. So, just in response to that, I think there is a true definition of red pill that isn't that widely discussed. And I think Rolo said it. I saw one of your talks with Rolo. It was like a group chat, and you guys were talking about. He described it as a praxeology or praxology. I'm not sure, and I think that's the actual definition.
But I describe it as an ontological descriptor.
Sure. So basically, what it is the truth of the world. I believe that's what the red pill is. I think it's directly taken from the movie The Matrix.
I don't think it's just about the truth of the world, but in this case, the truth of being. But so what we're really trying to get at is interpersonal dynamics, right?
Yeah.
So that's ontological. What is a woman? What is a man? What is it that makes them up, and why is it they behave the way that they do? This is moving into ontology, and I think that that's the distinction that I see versus the praxeology that Tomasi calls it. So this is the distinction in our worldview.
Well, I think the observation that Andrew is making, if I'm not mischaracterizing this, is correct, because Rollo will always argue it's a praxeology. You know, we're not here to be prescriptive, etc., etc. But the truth of the matter is, it has grown into this thing that is now becoming something different. You know, and maybe different creators. And you know, you've obviously got Pearl, you've got Fresh and Fit, and people like that. And it is, as you said earlier, you know, it's now becoming seen as more of a politicized thing than maybe it was originally intended. I think originally, yes, it was intended to be just observations about male, female.
I super feel like shit, caller. I'm sorry. I keep cutting you off. I'm sorry. I just want to get it all clear, but I do want you to be able to actually ask your question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I hear what you guys are saying. I think this is all like important dialogue, you know, so this is awesome.
Oh, okay.
My point basically is that I think a Christian society actually completely coexists with the red pill society, and I think the only delineation was like
is the Coomers, bro. It's the Coomers.
Yes, it is. If you take that one thing out, they're like exactly the same. Like,
they get close to the mapping on, right? But we got to get rid of the feminism and the Coomers. Don't we?
Like the main learning point from this is basically Andrew's just saying to me, just stop cooming and we'll be cool. You know, basically.
We're cool. Hey, we're cool. We're cool anyway. Just don't want you to counter signal the people who are trying to stop the cooming, right?
It's not just Troy, though, too. It's also, you know, I love Mylan Gaines. He's one of my favorite people in the world. It's people like that who talk about having a 400 body count, you know, things like this, and just continuing to add to it. You know, that's not necessary. That's my point of the call was basically to say, I don't think the red pill inherently promotes sexual degeneracy. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Out of interest, what's your opinion on it? Do you see that as degeneracy, or do you see it as like, okay, guys just want to have fun, or what's your personal perspective on it? Do you think the red pill will be better without that aspect to it?
Yeah, so I was first introduced to red pill through Fresh and Fit, and I still watch them, obviously. Yeah. But one thing that always put me off about that was they would talk about, you know, fucking a lot of women and teaching men how to do that, which I think teaching men how to do that in itself is not a problem. But when you, like, knowing how to talk to women is great, but then choosing to take that and fuck hundreds is probably bad for society. But the thing that Fresh and Fit do is they teach men all this stuff, and then they also say women shouldn't be whores. And I've heard Andrew say the exact same thing, so he knows what I'm talking about. And it's like, it's fucking terrible. You know what I mean? Like, we can't be...
It's counterintuitive.
We can't be causing the problem and then doing the problem.
Yeah,
you know?
It's counterintuitive. Yep.
It's like even me as somebody who wants to fuck a lot of women, I as a fucking like person that uses logic, I'm like, this doesn't fucking add up. You know what I mean? So
you do want to fuck a lot of women.
You said what?
You do want to. So you want to coom? You do want to fuck a lot of women?
Of course, but I think
wait, hang on. Does he though? Because if he says, I want to do this activity, it's carnal to me. But he has logic which tells him not to. What thing does he want? Wouldn't the thing he wants be the thing he sides with, which in this case is logical inclination that this is actually bad, even if his biological inclination is to do it? Wouldn't you say, Serious Red? Which thing do you really want? It seems like you want rationality and grounding, right?
I think there's duality. That's why I find myself on the red pill side.
Get the fuck out of here with this duality bullshit. Get over to the Christian side. Sick of it. Get out of here. Next caller.
I really don't see how there's a duality. I mean, I see what I see here.
Duality.
I think what you see with the red pill and if you want to label it the Christ pill, what you see that is very parallel is patriarchy. They both hold a positive view and desire for patriarchy and believe that patriarchy overall is what society needs. I think the Christ pillars will say, no, it's not just patriarchy, but it has to be biblical patriarchy.
I don't mean to cut you off. I'm just trying to keep the show going, but we're at 2.5. We're going to have to give it the wrap because Troy's actually been here a half hour longer than he agreed. So
yeah, no, I'm happy to be here, but I do need to just hop on a quick call.
Nope. I totally and completely understand. Serious Red, thank you so much, and to the callers we couldn't get to, I'm really sorry we couldn't get to you, but I do want to be generous to his time, as he's already been generous to us by giving us 30 minutes more of it than he agreed to. Glenn, can you wrap us up here?
Yes. So, thank you, gentlemen, for sharing us just spirited debate here on this topic. I think people have a general idea of what the contention is. And I think after today, we could see that there's a lot more work ahead to try to get anybody to agree on a way forward. Some coomers want to coom, and
coomers be cooming.
Coomers be cooming, and Christ pillars be popping out babies for the coomers to eventually coom. So I mean, it's like a cycle here.
Well, this is what I was asking you, Glenn. I think when we did that last show with Pearl, it's sort of like, is there a way to square this circle? And I'm not. Well, there's certainly
stick around, guys. We're gonna keep going after this. I'll get to all the super chats and stuff like that. Don't go anywhere.
Specifically
don't
around
fucking go
this,
anywhere.
The degeneracy side of it and whatever, But
But I do think Andrew said is right, though. There should be some joining together, and maybe the first step is at least let's just agree and work together on the things that you all agree with.
No feminism, no cooming.
You gotta let them, slowly.
A little bit of cooming.
Can you give
no cooming.
A 7-year cooming process, like 7 years to stop cooming?
Oh, jeez. All right, man.
Well, guys,
I'll get out of your guys' hair. Hey, thanks so much for coming and hosting this, Glenn. Troy, why don't you shout your channel out real quick? So that everybody knows where they can find
I mean,
you.
I'm putting this on my channel as well anyway, but if people just go to @RealTroyFrancis on YouTube, and also check out, actually, I've got a new channel which is called The Dating Game with Troy Francis, which I'm doing with Pearl on the Audacity Network. So have a look at that as well. I'll probably get some clips from this and stick it up on that too.
And you can subscribe to your new channel on the Audacity Network, correct?
Yes, exactly. It's called if you just look up The Dating Game with Troy Francis, you'll find it.
You were a great sport. I really appreciate having this debate, and it was the chat is overwhelmingly saying thank you so much for staying over. They really appreciate it very much. Glenn Lawrence, thank you for coming in and guest modding on such short notice. You want to shout your channel out as well? You guys
can find me at Glenn Lawrence. Thank you for allowing me to host my first debate. I didn't really got to say much. I just got to sit here and listen to you two guys go at it, and that was fun.
Well, there's always next time, There's always next time when it gets more brutal. But anyway, I
appreciate you guys having me on. You guys can find me at my channel, Glenn Lawrence Presents. Thank you guys.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you ever so much. Appreciate it, and speak soon, and maybe we can get back into it at another point.
Absolutely, I would be happy to do that. You have a great day, Troy, and I will see you guys later.
See you soon. Bye.
Okay, guys, listen. You're going to get the screen for just a second. I've got to take a leak. I've got to. It's 2.5 hours. Got to take a quick leak. All right, we're back. Did you guys have a good time? Did you have a good time? I think that was a lot of fun. Let me go back through, and we're going to get to all of these great super chats. Any questions that you guys have that I was not able to answer before, you can go ahead and send those in. We'll get to all of them. 1 second here. I just want to get on track with the super chats, make sure I don't miss any. Very kind of you all to turn out this fine evening. First one coming in from Big LD on the Dono chat side says, thanks for being you, Andrew. Please accept this dismal donation due to the lovely exchange rate. I'm sorry. That was actually from last night. Hang on. I got to get to today. Got to get to today. Make sure we're on the same page here. There we go. Starting with $5 from Anonymous, who says, I think my lowest point was rocking out to Iron Maiden while drinking vodka and Sprite from a measuring cup. Come on, man. That's not that bad. That's not that bad. Huge $100 super chat comes in from Beaten Cheeks. He says, no need to read this out loud. No need to, but I already did, right? Yeah. Beaten, if you're still around, absolutely we'll do that. Thank you for the 100. I really appreciate it. $20 comes in from Anonymous. Says, I can't wait to see you battle to the death on Fresh and Fit with Myron. Well, it's going to be with the whole panel, right? We have to do battle. It must be done. P.S. I bought your wife's book and sent it to my ex-girlfriend. She probably won't read it, but my conscience is clear that I gave her the opportunity. I can't even read the rest. But that's pretty funny. $15 comes in from R. Henry, who says, "Is Troy?" Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question, Mr. Henry. I have no idea. $50 comes in from Cobble, who says, "For the next vacation fund, great debate. Congrats again on you and your family's baptism. Thank you. Many years, man. God bless." Yeah, that was 3 years. The catechism. It was roughly. It wasn't quite 3 years. I think it was just over 2.5, but it was one of the finest moments of my life from my perspective. $4 comes in from Dog Shit Poster. Says, good job on the debate. I can't wait to see you on Fresh and Fit. Appreciate that very much. Very kind of you. Let me move over to the YouTube side now, guys. I'll double check the dono. I thought I just heard it chiming. Nope, maybe not. Let me move over to the YouTube here. We have to always get to all the super chats, right? That's the way it has to be. One second, let me find my place. It's always kind of a pain in the ass when you're doing a debate. I can't address the super chats as I go, which is what I usually do. So I actually have to go back, find the spot, make sure we get all of them. And I still tend to miss one or two. I apologize to people if that happens. I don't mean for it to happen. But when you get so much support and so many super chats. Marcus Antonio gifted 4 Crucible memberships. Very kind to you. Really appreciate that. $5 comes in from same guy, Marcus Antonio. He says, I went out and bought a British translator for this. That's kind of funny. $2 comes in from Michael Rutko, who says, for Crucible loading screen, the loading screen needs your cash. Ibel needs your cash. $5 from Nick DR says, why does Conservative Inc. seem so content to operate in a leftist paradigm and never really challenge their presuppositions? Because they would lose a lot of their audience. And that's the truth. That's why Con Inc. Sticks within the parameters of what is culturally acceptable to talk about. Some ways you can't even really blame them. You know what I mean? You can't even really blame them. But that's why that happens. $10 comes in from Steve Sandman, who says, Remember that although you may be a great engineer, you are no rocket surgeon. Well, that's true. I wouldn't say I was a great engineer, but trade engineer, I thought I did okay. 9 gifted subs comes in again from Marcus Antonio for a grand total now of 14 that I'm counting. Very kind of you. I hope all of you guys can put some crowns in chat. Awful nice of these people to gift so many memberships to the audience. $5 from Siege D. He says, hey, why didn't you tell Glenn Lawrence was going to be the moderator for this debate? Also, I'm not taking sides. I'm here for the discussion. Well, I actually had reached out to Zen first, but I didn't get a response. He was probably busy most of the day. So I just went with somebody who could, maybe take an unbiased approach. I thought he did a fine job. I'm an old hand at debate. So I think many people say, well, you don't even need a moderator. It's like if you don't have a moderator, though, things can go off the rails pretty quick. They can go off pretty quick. Unconventional Man sends in $10 and says, Troy is your typical NPC red pillar, can't engage outside of red pill talking points. He's a nice guy. That's all I'll say about that. $10.57 comes in from Patriot Core, who says, T-Roy looks well into his 30s, and he's stuck in hormonal teenage mindset. This is so sad. This guy needs to grow up yesterday. Appreciate that super chat very much. $3.71 comes in from 1JP Belly 1, who says, feminism is anti-male like him, but we get put in the same boat. That was wild to me that I couldn't get a single delineation between what he believes in and feminism. I thought that was going to be the angle, that we would be tangling up on, how he delineates from feminism and this type of thing. I was not expecting to just hear nothing. That was a surprise to me. 50 pounds or 63 American dollars comes in from Jaxby, who says, I feel like Troy agrees with most of Andrew's points, but a lot of his lifestyle is tied into the red pill space, and being Christ-like is hard work. I do feel like we had more common ground ultimately than we didn't. But I feel like it's good for us to have these kind of slugfest debates so that we can get through what these real distinctions are. And I feel like, I feel like it's a good idea to have the people on our side who can do this, do it, right? Appreciate huge super chat, by the way, from you, Jaxby. Very nice of you. Iohazard sends in $5. He says, I find it odd that he's appealing to it's in my nature to spread my seed while not actually spreading his seed. Well, that's what I was saying, is that, if there is this biological drive for men to have sex, okay, I can accept that. But it used to be that there's a consequence to this, which would be offspring, right? And so if you can coom without any of the responsibility, it seems like people are more willing to do that. So that sounds like a social contagion, doesn't it? $5 comes in from Doberman, who says, I want privileges without responsibility, Troy and feminists. I essentially agree. $5 comes in from Column Rack, who says, look how fast the Women's Only Club failed as a business, and you'll see how easy men could collectively fix this issue. I believe that that's true, that collectivization of men is a way to fight back inside of this arena. $5 comes in from Bang Bang Lulu, who says, remember, coom with respect, coom with care. That's pretty funny. $13 comes in from Jaskby, who says, I don't think the red pill guys will think Andrew is authentic because they live in a world of clickbait, and ceding the ground to Christ's religion would mean less money to them. I don't know. I think that guy walked away with a different perspective, and I hope he thinks about it. I'm not willing to take the black pill on that they're just not going to listen because it's going to hurt their wallet. I think that people do ultimately listen. I've seen people's hearts and minds change. CHG sends in $2 and says, shout out to Mr. Moderator Glenn. Yeah, I'm sure Glenn is still listening, and shout out to him. Logan Daly sends in $5 and he says, there is no great nothing. That's just nihilistic self-justification nonsense. Couldn't agree with you more. $10 comes in from Junk Account. He says, became became weak in 20th C because the West, most men were off at war while women were running around churches. That's why most messages are feel-good, lovey-dovey messages. We need the truth in love also. Yeah, that's a good point. You know, actually, that brings up a different point that I haven't looked into, how much women were able to acquire power inside of churches during wartime. That's an interesting avenue I haven't thought about, so I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. 10 more gifted memberships from Marcus Antonio. That brings him to a grand total of 24 memberships just this stream. Very kind of you, sir. Appreciate it very much. $20 comes in from Aaron Darkhorse, who says, progress, I'm baffled. Baffled by progress. $4 comes in from Alex M. Doesn't say anything. He just wanted to show support for the stream. $10 from Logan Daly, who says, I'm the turd in this. Now you listen. Wait, I feel like I got baited somehow. Yeah, I said, do you owe me $10? And he actually sent in the $10. L's for Andrew. He actually did it. Damn it. He actually did it. That would be L's in chat for me. Yet again, another loss from the chat to Andrew. Happens all the time. It's happening more frequently, though, which is pissing me off. I feel like the L to W ratio against the chat for me is 1 in 3, and I'd like it to be closer to 1 to 1. $10 from Philip Smith, who says, I'm a lot less confident in Myron being able to hold the line with you. Well, we'll see how it goes. You know, a thing people often mistake me for is that I'll be extremely good faith with people as I explore what their worldview is to prepare myself for much larger debates. But when the time comes, when I'm debating real ideology, that's a whole different animal. And I'm very good at doing it. But just because I'm very charitable to people, some of the lower level debates, so that I can really try to understand what the entire worldview is before I move in on it, I think sometimes people mistake those types of good faith conversations with the kind of debating that I'm actually capable of doing. So $2 comes in from Name, who says, can you be atheist and still be consistent morally? Yes, you can have moral consistency as an atheist, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have good grounding for it. $10 comes in from Indio, who says, what do you think of the Red Pill's evolutionary psychology shtick for explaining female behavior? I think it's not a thing, but a bunch of just so-called stories masquerading as science. Interesting you bring that up, as Michael Sartain did agree to do a debate on this topic with me. I have to give him a call, and we're going to get that set up. So you'll be able to get my viewpoint on that much sooner than you think. Much sooner than you think. So, all right. I think that clears them all out, the ones that came in. I appreciate that. So anyway, guys, what are your questions before I wrap the stream up this fine evening? We'll try to keep it just about a 3-hour mark, so about 15 minutes. What's on your mind? What's on your mind? When it comes to actual debate, Andrew's bad faith, obfuscation, and schematic word games, my favorite. Schematic word games. Member chats, unfortunately, I can't see them on this end, on the back end of this. Usually I read off the member chats if I see them in chat during a live stream. There's nothing I can do about that, just because the setup here was I was going on with somebody else, so I wasn't able to save those. I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that. Can an atheist ever have grounded morality? I don't think they can. At least not with what we mean by grounded. Perhaps it's possible. Andrew, why can you only lose to chat? Who taught you these ways? Okay, so I got a theory about why it is I take so many L's from chat. It's because many of you guys know me from like several years of watching the show at this point, right? Like over 2 years, some of you, from watching the show. So you know how to get me. You know how to like put in a comment that you know that I'm going to take the wrong way and lose my fucking mind about because I just take it out of context because there's like 1,000 people fucking chatting. And so I'm going to go off on you, and then you're going to be like, bro, I wasn't even talking about that. And then I'm going to be like, take the L. I think you guys play me is what I think. And I haven't figured out a tactic against it yet, except like time that fucker out, which is kind of bad faith, right? But it's fun. It's fun. So that's why I think, especially in the last 2 months, I feel like the L to W ratio against chat has been pretty lopsided. I'm pretty upset about it. One JB Belly sends in $2. He says, please do Fresh and Fit. We are. We're going on about 2 weeks, is my understanding. So it should be good. Should be good. This is my boomstick, says Jay William. I love that. You remember your first ever debate? How did it go? I do. It was actually 1v3, and it was complete and total Andrew annihilation. Total Andrew annihilation. Completely brutalized the entire panel. It was pretty good. Old School Ninja sends in 15 Canadian dollars, says, do you think most of the problems in our society comes from the fact we do not follow God's rules, but man's rules? Yeah. Yeah, I do. I really do. Someone gifted me a sub on here too. Yeah, lots of very, very generous people in the Crucible chat. They tend to gift a lot of memberships. Very kind of them to do. Scopaf sends in $5, says, on atheists, how do you make room for them in your worldview? Are there too many to completely discount, and not all are awful? I agree that not all atheists are awful, but I think that most of the ones who aren't adopt a Christian worldview for their morality, and then what they do is they get rid of the God portion and make justifications external gods. So they say, I don't believe in God, I just like all of the things that Christians do, right? So as long as I guess that keeps society going, I'll be Christian adjacent and kind of cheerlead them on from the side. And I always think it's always just a matter of time before you can bring one of those people around to the rest of it. That's just my viewpoint. $5 from Justin. It says, tea is better than vaping. I stand by it. Time me out. Time that fucker out. Time him out. Fucking bastard. What kind of shit is that? The Alcuin Project sends in $10. Says, there are 2 Orthodox churches in my area, OCA and Greek. Would you recommend one over the other in order to become an inquirer? I would go to the Greek Orthodox Church. And listen, I'm going to tell you why. It's not because it's going to be better than the OCA necessarily. Here's my reasoning. You can hold it against me. But the Greek churches have such good food. They just, when you're done with a long liturgy, you have to fast all morning before you can take communion. Sure is nice to have that good food, you know what I mean? And the Greeks, man, they make sure, like the eating portion, they don't skimp on the eating portion. They don't skimp on the eating portion. And I'm like, well, if you got good food, you got to go for the good food. Got to go for the good food. They are rich. The Greeks are pretty rich. That's true. Yeah, it's good. It's good. I mean, they don't just do Greek food. They just go all out with the food. You know what I mean? That's why anytime I'm in a Greek church and you do liturgy, afterwards when I go and I eat with my whole family, I don't even feel bad at all about putting $40 in the tray or $50 in the tray, because I'm like, we all just ate like kings in this place. The least I can do is contribute towards some good food and the wonderful hospitality. So yeah, I would. No. I didn't say why did you join the church because of food. I said if you had to make the choice between Rokor and Greek, if you're just wondering, go for the food, right? There was a guy I told that joke to once, and he was like, "Wait, you're not serious?" He's like, that's the way it's supposed to be. That was Albanian or Resident Sleeper, right? I told that joke to him, and he's like, that's exactly how it's supposed to work, stupid. Dyronimer sends in $5 and says, do you find it more important to advocate for the Christian worldview against atheism or for religion in general? It's far more important to advocate, I think, for Christianity than any other form of religiosity. But I do think that it's important that you can take people to places step by step. You can say, oh, yeah, but that's religion, that's religion, that's religion. And then you can move it to another subset, to another subset. You're stepping them through it a piece at a time. And remember, I'm a political debater. This is a political thing that we're engaging in with the red pill. This is political ideology ultimately that we're arguing. It just so happens I come at it with a Christian worldview. But anybody who thinks that I'm a Christian apologist or anything of the sort, sorely mistaken. I'm not a Christian scholar by any means. Still a novice, in fact, in that respect, and that'll stay that way for the foreseeable future. There's guys who are way better than I am at it. Nick DR sends in $5 and says, that is true. I'm a deontologist theist, and if I'm being honest, Christianity informs my duties. I was raised Protestant, but I've strayed away, and I'm telling you, you're going to stray back. Your path ends narrow and in front of a cross, I promise. Kevin Bryan sends in $20 and says, we have tons of old ladies who make awesome food at our Sabbath potlucks. All races, all foods, awesome. Well, I mean, it's the community, right? It's community building that these guys can't offer. It's the big chink in their armor. No, it is political, Red B. Whether you believe it or not, the what is considered the red pill ideology has come on the radar of the progressive left. I have document after document I can show you of many PACs who see the red pill as leading to the black pill, which then leads to the dissident right. This is not a joke, and yes, it has become a political fight, whether you like it or not. And so that's the way I view it, is as a political fight. Indio 007 sends in $5, says, I agree that men are more virtuous than women. For instance, when has a woman ever sacrificed her own life for their own honor? This is a point which I've brought up many, many times. Good on you for recognizing the same thing that I did. So that's a very good insight, Indio. And I appreciate the $5 donations. Very kind of you. What else you guys got? Philip Smith sends in $5, says, I hope Myron watched this, because if you're holding an ace up your sleeve, I can't see how he has a chance. Respect. You changed my mind. I'm trying to change minds. That's the goal. That's the goal. You know, when I say I have arguments that you've never heard, I'm not kidding. Women do sacrifice their lives for babies and children, though. Yes, that's true, but so do men. So I wouldn't call that extenuous. In fact, I'd even say men make that sacrifice for babies and women, whereas women only make that sacrifice for babies. So I'd still count that as a virtue for men. Unzipped for $5 says, when can I buy my Coomers Be Cooming t-shirt? I will make sure Mr. E does that. We'll try to have some of that stuff available at site launch. So that'll be good. Yeah, moving over to the Dono chat. Sorry about that, guys. I get caught up. 1 second. Let me move back. $10 comes in from John, your cop buddy on Twitter. Good guy, John. Make sure you say some prayers for him. He's got a tough job. Do better, Mr. Wilson. The toothpaste analogy doesn't work on British. Oh, dude. He says the toothpaste analogy doesn't work on the British because it got fucked up teeth. That's funny. Honestly, don't know which was over faster, this Dillahunty debate or the Jessica Gill. Good stuff there, bro. I appreciate it, John. That was super funny. The toothpaste analogy doesn't work on the British. What are you doing? $6 comes in from Anonymous. Says, hey, Andrew, great show. I'd like to call in and contend with your ideas or idea men are more virtuous than women. Actually happy to do that. Tomorrow there's a panel going on with Made by Jim Bob. I think he's going to take in some callers later in the panel. Make sure that you're there for that. I will be hosting right here on the Crucible, and so you can call in. Wilhelm Bones, long time Crucible contributor, almost never missed a chance to send me $10 for a show. Sends in $10. No message entered, just wanted to show support for the stream. $20 from Guy you swiped left on, said, wanted to thank you for all of your logic and consistency. I really appreciate that. Hope you enjoyed the debate tonight. $10 comes in from Doctrine Dark, who said, I've become black-pilled beyond belief. Well, we're going to bring you back, bro. Still happy with myself and my life, but I feel like society is crumbling at an unstoppable rate. It can't be fixed, in my opinion. Every day it looks worse and worse. Hope, man. Have hope. Have hope. It's never over till it's over. And, you know, if you look back in your own life and you think about that, you recognize that many of the times that you thought, your life was over, things were destroyed, there was no recovery, you're in the worst spot you could ever imagine, you got through it. You got through it, man. The worst times in your life, you got through. You know, don't be black-pilled. Remember that. Remember that. $5 comes in from Skank Hunter 42, says, listening to your debates has me considering returning to the church. Grew up Catholic. Heard you say that you came to the Orthodox faith logically. Can you speak to how exactly? Where should an Orthodox curious person start? Go to Jay Dyer's channel and begin listening to his logical argumentation on behalf of Christian Orthodoxy. It'll wake you up very quickly. $10 comes in from Franklin, who says, have you considered smokeless tobacco, Andrew? Might be better for your lungs. Yes, I am going to make it a priority to move away from cigarettes and try this Zen out, maybe puff the pipe a little bit. I appreciate the $10 very much. First person Q says, time me out if you dare. Find first person Q and time that fucker out. Find that fucker and time him out. Philip Smith sends in $5. It says, you're more likely to win because you already did it. Oh, no. That's so good. Oh, man. That's true. You're more likely to win because you've already won. It's pretty good. Pretty good. That was not me, says first person Q. But just to be sure, we're going to time you out anyway for 5 minutes. Sorry, the guy sent in $5. You're getting timed out, son. That's the way it works. You're getting timed out. Deal with it. Take one for the team, even if that wasn't you. And you know why else? You know why else I'm timing you out, fucker? Because I don't remember ever having timed you out. And I feel like you've done something at some point where you deserved this timeout, even if I don't know what it is. So it's like retroactive justice, okay? It's retroactive justice. Christians have a duty to rescue black pillars. We're going to try. One black pillar at a time, right? Anyway, that was a ton of fun. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I'm going to get out of here, guys. From all of us here at the Crucible. No, hang on. I got to do this right, or else people will bitch for the rest of their life, right? Because I guess I keep cutting it off before I get through the whole thing. What would your counter argument for a libertarian saying Christian nationalism and socialism are two sides of the same coin? I'd actually say the opposite is true. And Christianity does a lot better at guarding against socialism and Marxism than libertarianism, as those are actually the heads and tails end of the same coin. So one of the few things that can really safeguard anything is monarchy or some form of a limited democracy. Oh, Cotel raid, yeah. Yeah, we'll do that. We will do that for sure. I didn't realize he was live. So let me set this up. so that we can do a raid over to Cotel. Tyler Gorick says, thanks, man, with his super chat from his membership. Thank you. Thank you for coming out. Thank you all for showing up tonight. It means a lot to me. I'm really happy to have so many great supporters. It makes a world of difference. Thanks, everybody who showed up as well for the debate prep. Ran a lot of ideas, especially Philip. Philip had really good ideas. And I did piggyback off of some of them. I wanted to make sure that that I researched some of them a little bit better. But yeah, he had some great pushback. So a special thanks to you, Philip. I really appreciate it. Let's see, Church of the Eternal Logos. Let's make sure that that's the right stream. Real quick. Good luck with degenerate debaters. I'll need it, J. William C. Thank you so much for the great super chat. All right, guys, we're all set for this raid. Make sure you give Cotel some love. Drop some memberships on him. Great guy. Can't recommend his stuff enough. Now, we'll do this right. We'll see how long I stare at the camera like an idiot. But because there's a delay, I guess I've been cutting myself off early, so we'll try this the right way. You ready? From all of us here at the Crucible. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. Okay. Just want to make sure we got this all. Okay, we got it all correct. Philip Smith says, the pleasure is mine. Thank you. Thank you again, man. From all of us here at the Crucible to all of you out there in Crucible land, have a wonderful night.